Okay, good morning, Mr. Mayor. You are live on our webpage at www.pinecrest-fl.gov/live, and for the first time, streaming live on our YouTube channel.
That's great. So welcome, everybody. This is the August 25th, 2020 workshop. It's something that we do every forum and format to do these meetings in. I think these Zoom meetings have given us even more participation than we typically get, not only during our council meetings and special council meetings, but during our budget workshops. So the managers held this very same workshop with each of us individually. She's then held the very same workshop with the community, correct, manager?
Yes, that's correct.
Now we're going to do it on our behalf, where the council can actually ask questions. After this, if we need to do any more workshops, we'll do them. And then we'll have 2 public hearings on the topic where we can interact as a community and ask questions back and forth. So, Mr. Clerk, is there a way for the public to interact in this meeting?
They can always do so by email, Mr. Mayor, and I will pass those along. I did forward to the council any and all public comments we had received relating to the budget prior to today's workshop.
Okay, perfect. So we've got that, and you've given them to the manager so she can answer the questions if any come up.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the manager, and we'll get started and go through the workshop and see where we end up.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, before we get started, my intent is to go through the PowerPoint presentation that's been updated since the last time I provided it to council, and then we can do deeper dive into revenues and expenditures, and then kind of wrap it up. I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible because most of you, obviously, all of you have heard this already. So for your sake, I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible.
Right.
So I'm going to just. Guido, can you allow me to share screen, please? Okay. All right. So we're going to go to budget presentation. Okay, here we go. So we're going to do, can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation? Okay. All right, so let's get started. Okay, here, I'm just going to go through each slide and explain what each slide means. Currently, this slide is showing where we've been throughout our 25-year history with regards to mill rates. The millage rate is the rate that's charged for every $1,000 of taxable value on a person's property. As you can tell, the highest mill rate we have ever had in our 25-year history is 2.4. Currently, we are at 2.399, and the proposed millage rate that I'm recommending is the 2.399.
Yossi, can I interject and
Sure.
say and the 2007, 2008 numbers, that 2007 number was the forced rollback by the legislature, is that correct?
It was the forced rollback by the legislature. It actually put us at a rate that was lowest that we had ever been, and was an interesting scenario because it did not take into consideration the fact we have purchased the 14-acre property that is now the complex, the Pinecrest Gardens complex with the community center and library. So that created a interesting scenario for us to have to try to recover that. But yeah,
and the average mill rate then includes that data point in 2008, which seemed to be outliers, correct?
Correct.
So it's an artificially low average millage rate.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, next slide. This is showing you as of today what the different proposed millage rates across the county by all the cities. Of course, these numbers may still change during the public hearings for each of these municipalities. One of the questions I did get during the town hall, so I'll just mention it here for clarification purposes. Key Biscayne, if you'll note, is on the bottom. They have a total low millage. So this ranking is based on the total millage. When you add all the taxing jurisdictions, it's not ranked by just the municipal millage. But in Key Biscayne's scenario specifically, that city millage includes the fire rescue component because they have their own fire rescue department. But these are ranked based on total millages, not on the city's mill rate. If you strictly do it on the city's mill rate, you would obviously drop Key Biscayne, and then we would still be ranked where we are now with the proposed mill rate as far as the numbers below and above us.
And these rates at the very bottom, like under us, Miami Lakes, Palmetto Bay, I mean, you're talking mills. I mean, there's hardly a difference. I mean,
And one of the things I always point out when I do this through my town hall is, for example, Bell Harbor, Aventura, and Sunny Isles Beach. They have a lot of multifamily condominium, huge properties. Their tax base is very different than what ours looks like. In the case of Doral, they have huge industrial and commercial areas. So each one of those cities is very different than ours from a land use mix. Palmetto Bay is likely the one that most resembles the village as far as how their land use is split up.
And they're 1/10 of a mill difference in us.
They're also facing an over $1 million budget shortfall in this cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions with regards to this slide? Okay. So I'm just going to go over some of the budget summaries. Again, most of you have already heard this presentation. We had I'm recommending proposed general budget, which including all transfers, of $25,256,430. This budget has a slight increase in revenue of 0.05%. The decrease in expenditures, including all the transfers and carryovers from the current fiscal year, is a 2.7% decrease. The most significant departmental increases occurred in the building and planning department. We are having to, because even though and I'll go through this in a little more detail, even though we're seeing a decrease in permit activity or construction activity, the inspection and the amount of work that's being generated by the inspections, which usually lag by 2 to 3 years from the permit activity, is starting to go up. And so we're having issues of maintaining level of service with just way too many plans in queue. We typically have over 80 plans that are waiting for review. So we're going to be recommending additional staff to do plans review as well as inspections. The second largest departmental increase occurred in the information technologies division. And this is really due to the conversion of all our operating systems to cloud-based systems, which for cybersecurity purposes is the way to go, but also comes with a larger dollar sign. Okay. Going into, as you all know, ad valorem taxes is our primary source of revenue. This year, we're anticipating an increase of 3.22% in taxable value. Ad valorem, if council were to continue with the proposed mill rate as proposed, we're anticipating increase in ad valorem taxes of $295,205. Building related activity decreased by $400,000. Public works activity is also decreasing by $4,000. Utility taxes are expected to increase by $200,000. These are, by the way, our categories of revenues, and we can go into more detail later if you have any questions on any of these slides. Intergovernmental revenues overall are down by approximately $100,000. There were some decreasing trends in those revenue categories, but we did have a $100,001 influx of revenues from a COVID related police grant. Charges for services are down a total of $136,800. And the majority of that decrease is in connection to programming revenue decreases for programs at the community center, parks, and Pinecrest Gardens. So the actual revenue increase, when you take a look at I'm sorry, this $12,295, Marie, is not the total revenue. This is the old one, is it right? You're on,
That is the increase in total when you compare 20 to 21.
oh, the increase in total.
Yeah.
Not include, well, I thought we were working with a surplus of 200 and, oh, this is the
That's
increase in
revenue.
total, because
This is
that's
revenue.
revenue. Yeah, just revenue. So yeah, it's a very small increase. We're basically keeping revenues the same as the current fiscal year with adjustments, obviously, accordingly. And if you recall, some of the revenues came in after we had the first presentation, because the state is always providing us numbers through July. And so some of those numbers came after we had already published the original budget to our favor. They came in better than what we had anticipated when we were doing our estimates. Okay. So aside from all of those issues that we discussed earlier, there's always possible fiscal stability impacts. So in a general sense, when we looked at how we are forecasting for the budget, and we looked and did research on economic trends and forecasts as established by the Congressional Budget Office, and just looked at economic indicators that are provided by different university and research centers. And all those indicators are forecasting that the economic downturn due to the coronavirus pandemic will last about 2 years. And then we'll be back on track from a gross national product or domestic product perspective, and how the economy will start ramping up again to pre-pandemic times. There's also efforts that continue every year at the state to reduce either the local communication services tax, which if the legislature touches any of that, that revenue represents $729,000 to the city, to the village. Red light camera programs are constantly being looked at as well. They've died in committee, but if that were to be affected, that particular revenue source generates over $1 million, or is anticipated to generate over $1 million to the village. Any tax holidays, usually every year the legislature does tax holidays. Any tax holidays obviously have an impact on our sales tax revenues. And then any other continued efforts to attack home rule issues. There's been discussion to do away with local business tax revenues, also to eliminate lobby registration fees. So anything that the legislature does is a variable, it's an unknown variable that would obviously have a impact on any of these forecasts. So are there any questions just on the revenue side of things, of how they work? If not, then I'll move on to what we look like from an expenditure standpoint, what our expenditures are anticipated to be.
Okay. So when we went over this in the first place, we've got more revenues than we anticipated a few weeks ago, right? By a couple $100,000.
Correct. What ended up happening is they came in, Marie, what was the one that came in a lot higher than what we had anticipated or originally thought? Marie, you can take yourself and keep yourself off of mute if you want. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna go into the file and tell you exactly which ones they are.
Okay.
One second, I'm almost there, sorry. Okay, the half cent came in 168,000 more. The revenue sharing came in 103,000 more, and the CST came in 52,000 less.
That's a communication services tax came in.
So in total, an increase of 219,435.
Property value stayed relatively even this year or went up?
It was an increase on your slide too. What was
Here.
it?
There it is. The taxable value increased from 4,993,000,000 to 5,154,000,000.
So, Ms. Manager, what do they anticipate? I mean, the economy, it's uncertain, right, over the next couple of years. How does that look to impact small cities like ours? Is it different than somebody like Miami Beach that depends so highly on bed taxes and a lot of commercial? Our revenues are primarily derived from property taxes, right?
Correct. Our primary revenue source is property ad valorem tax revenues. Those are not impacted by something like a pandemic, though that type of revenue can be impacted by, large storms, which would potentially have a depressing effect on property values, but not a pandemic. That would not have an impact on.
I'm almost thinking that a small city like Pinecrest may be different than a Miami Beach or the city of Miami. Just we derive our revenues differently.
Correct.
And we wouldn't be as vulnerable or sensitive to what's happening in the remainder of the economy, particularly since the stock market's going crazy and interest rates are almost giving money away at this point in time. It may actually have a positive impact on property values, and they go up at an appreciable rate. Everybody who can get a place here is probably looking for one, but I don't know that for a fact. Either way, okay. So
well, we should also acknowledge that interest rates really have a huge factor on this sort of thing. And number one, we're talking about small amounts, right? A 3% increase is not huge, especially given the fact that we're going to have around 1% and change inflation this year, right? So all of that's suppressive. Cost of living will increase as it usually does. At the same time, interest rates out there are basically zero. The margin at which banking and other financial institutions can make a profit has basically reduced that margin down to close to zero. So we're moving into a very strange financial time when interest rates are so low that if you have cash, like to go out and buy a home in Florida, the money is basically free to do so. So likely our property values will go up as opposed to stay flat or decrease.
Right. And all forecasts are anticipating sales, residential sales to continue. People are staying home. So in that sense, we do anticipate, people are looking to upgrade homes and that sort of activity. So the effects on our revenue streams are not as significant as something like Miami Beach that it has a large portion of revenues dealing with the hospitality industry or tourism tax type revenue sources, which we don't have.
And we're also not really reliant on retail, right? I mean, Florida,
Correct.
Miami in particular is a mall city, and these mall activities really affect so many cities, and we simply don't have that.
Right. So sales taxes have gone down a little bit statewide from the, because people are perhaps, gas local option sales tax has gone down somewhat because people are not traveling as much, but the purchasing power continues to happen even online today. So that has not been affected as much as we anticipated originally.
I have a question. It has nothing to do with the budget. Is Dayland Mall open? I mean, I never go there, so I'm just curious. Are shops like Macy's and stuff? They are open?
Open.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So moving to the general fund expenditures overall, we are looking, if you look at, let's see, the second column, which totals 25,950,155. And then the last column is the proposed budget for next year. That is where you'll see that 2.7% decrease in expenditures, the total. So we'll go more in detail by department if council wants to. I know you've heard this spiel before, but the total for this upcoming year proposed expenditures is 2.7% less than current fiscal year. This slide represents how our expenditures are divvied up. As you can tell, the majority of our expenditures are tied to what's called personal services, and that is the salaries that are paid to employees, benefit structure, pension, vacation, sick leave, health insurance, those kinds of expenditures. Operating expenditures represents just shy of 25%. And those are like the widgets, the things we have to purchase in order to operate the day-to-day. Capital outlay is less than 0.5%, 0.46%. And those are amounts of expenditures for things that typically are more than $5,000 that fall into that category. Grants and aids is an amount that we set aside typically to provide $50,000 of that goes to schools. And then we have a little additional funding that we always set aside for community-based organizations that come in and pitch events and ideas to council, and then council chooses to award or not award to those entities. And then transfers are funding that go from the general fund to other funds. And we'll go over all our different funds shortly, but the large amount of that transfer goes to either debt service or to the capital improvement fund. So those are our two largest funds. So the total amount of expenditures again is $25,256,430. And that amount is about 2.7% less in expenditure than what we spent this current year. So what is built into this budget, just in a general sense? We maintained, I'm recommending maintenance of the millage rate at 2.399. That will translate at the end to a surplus of about $212,000. We've included a salary increase for all employees with the exception of the clerk and I, which is not built into the budget. The 5% increase is approximately 2% cost of living and 3% merit. The collective bargaining units have a different breakdown, but when you total the cost of living and merit, those contracts also translate into a 5% salary increase overall. The officers or sworn officers fall under the Florida retirement system as their pension. And this year, the state is recommending a decrease in the contribution from 25.48 to 24.45 for the retirement contribution. So that's already been built in to the proposed budget. The proposed budget is recommending the 2 new part-time positions for one mechanical inspector and one part-time electrical inspector. On the expenditure side, when we get to the building and planning department, you'll also see an increase in operating expenditures for outside consultant, which is we're going to try to find either through a third-party vendor, a third building inspector. And if not, if we can find somebody in-house, it's cheaper to bring them in-house because we're not paying middleman. We've just been having issues trying to find somebody in-house for that position. So if we were to find somebody that we can hire in-house, then that funding will go through a budget amendment at some point in the future into personal services. So the grants program, like I mentioned, we did continue the 50,000. We've added, we continue to have funding in that line item, specifically for the publication of a school brochure, even though that's right now on hold, nothing's moved forward with that. We dropped the miscellaneous grants for special community events to 2,500. We've kept funding for transportation of children from the schools to field trips and Uber transport for kids from the high school to the Sprouts middle music program, even though right now none of that's happening because everything's being done virtually. But we did keep that in there just in the event that schools go live sometime after December. This is a snapshot, or rather, are there any questions on any of this on this slide? Okay, this slide goes over what's happening with our village pension contributions. One of the things that we'll discuss a little further in the presentation, is, we had talked last year, we had anticipated and council had bought into starting to reinstate some of the lost benefits that had occurred back in the 2007, 2008 recession. Unfortunately, I was not able to do some of those improvements just because of what's happened with the pandemic. We were trying to keep conservative on those recommendations. So just want to point out to you, because it will be coming up in the wish list that didn't make the budget, is the cost that would we would incur if the council would reinstate the pension contribution back to a 13% for general employees, but that is not included in our current proposed budget. Okay, proposed capital projects. So as you know, part of the recommendation is that we retire a bond that is otherwise scheduled to be completed next year. So my recommendation is that we would retire that bond 1 year early and then reissue that $8 million bond for the following projects.
Can you please let us know when that bond was issued and at what interest rate?
Sure. Marie, do you have that information? Can you bring it up and then let me know when you have it, and we'll switch screens so you can show the council. Actually, you know what? I think I have it. Give me a second. Let me just stop share screen here, and I'm going to show you. I have the budget document. Hold on.
Councilmember Kraft isn't joining us. Oh, he's here. Hi, Doug. How are you? Now I can see that you're
Hello.
on the screen. Hey, I couldn't see you because we were screen sharing with Yossi.
Yeah, I was 15 minutes late getting guys to work.
Can you guys see what I'm going just through our website right now? Can you
Yes.
see that? Okay. Hold on. For anyone watching, this is how you get to our budget document. So let me just move you over and go down to okay, debt service fund. Okay. Okay, debt service fund. Okay, so this here will show you a snapshot of all our outstanding debt. We have 5 outstanding debt. The one that we're talking about potentially retiring 1 year early is the second column, the Para Jungle and Gardens Series 2012. Marie, do you have what that, let me just look and see if we have this information here. Pinecrest Gardens 2012. 2012A, here you go. So the interest rate for that particular bond that we're retiring was 2.3%. Did you want all the other ones or is that the only one?
No, that's just the one in particular.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, let me go back to, okay. Budget presentation. Okay, so we were on, okay. Okay. Here we sorry, I'm just trying to bring up the other, here we go. Okay, so if council were to agree to retire that bond, and by the way, the expenditures, including all the transfers, all the payout, the early payout of that bond is already built into the proposed budget. So even with that, we are still looking at a decrease in expenditures of 2.7%. Those.
You mean, are you saying that we're going to be taking cash out of our cash reserves to retire this early?
Correct. Well, no, we're not. I'm sorry. No, we're not.
We're not taking cash out of the cash reserves in order to retire this early.
No.
So there's
we were originally, but because of the additional funding that's come in, now we're looking at a surplus of $212,000, even with paying the bond early.
Okay, so we're talking about paying off debt early, refinancing likely at a lower rate, and not touching our cash reserves in order to do so.
Correct.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Okay. So the proposed capital projects are, and I'm just going to go over them quickly just to remind everyone, the Flagler Grove turf is something that we've been trying to build for years, and we put it in budgets and then taken it out. We finally got a $400,000 grant from the state to build the artificial turf field, and that grant requires a match. And so this provides the match. Sunnyland LED lights, we've in the last bond updated all the LED, all the lights at all the other parks, the sports lighting to LED. So this is the last park that would need upgrading. Evelyn Greer Park playground features, you'll recall in the last bond we had funding to resurface the playground area. And in looking at pricing that out and moving forward with that project, we realized that the playground features, some of the playground features of the existing playground needed replacement, but the manufacturer will not replace those because the actual playground structure and because of the canopy that was put in after that playground structure was done are now not in compliance with like the safety regulations for playground, safe distance for play. So we're recommending going ahead and replacing that playground. It's already almost 20 years old. Well, this bond would allow for the complete replacement, and then we would be matching with the funding that's in the old bond to do the resurfacing with what they call pour and play, which is the rubbery surface. We have outdoor sconces that need replacing at Evelyn Greer Park that are rusting. We have Coral Pine Park phase 2 to do construction, and then the construction documents and the actual construction.
I have a question.
Oh, I have our Parks and Recreation director just said that Greer Park's lighting has not been upgraded either. I apologize. I thought we had already done those. Go ahead, Mr.
Is this, are all the projects here, are some of these in the potential bond?
These are all in the potential bond. This is what makes up the bond. This is what I'm recommending we use the bond for, is to do these projects.
Okay, I had eight separate projects. This is more. Okay, got it.
And Yossi, a quick question. What's a sconce? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Sconce is just the lights that go on the columns.
Oh,
So
okay.
some of the lighting fixtures, because Evelyn Greer is a 20-year-old park, some of those lighting fixtures are starting to rust. So they just
Got it. Lighting fixtures. I get it.
fixtures, right?
Thank you.
I thought it was that thing you ate at a continental breakfast.
No,
Yeah,
that's a
it's not
scone.
that
That's a
kind of
scone. I know what a scone is. But I had to read it twice because I thought she was talking about scones.
No,
But thank you.
sconce.
But thank you. Sconce. Okay.
Sconce. So Coral Pine Park, if you
Another one.
recall, I want to say in 2013, we did the master plan process for Coral Pine Park, and that provided for replacement of all the buildings. We did partially with the last bond, one of the last bonds, the tennis center, and this would be doing the remainder of what we call phase 2 of that master plan, which was redoing the multi-purpose room building and then putting in a walking path and some improvements to the parking lot.
And Yossi, that master plan, was that just invented by staff and put on the books, or was there a process behind creation of that master plan?
There was a process. We had, we hired a consultant. The consultant went in and looked at all of that.
Lots of community input, and lots. But somebody mentioned to me, if we go ahead with this Coral Pine Park, considering where we are today with have we done the construction documents? Have they been done already? Or that's just okay.
That's set aside. That's 133,000 we're setting aside to do the construction documents.
Okay, yeah, we should consider on a go forward basis designing it.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, go ahead, Councilman, Vice Mayor.
Okay. that we should design it with the pandemic in mind, in the sense that we should be able to have windows that open for natural air ventilation and not make it something that's totally dependent on air conditioning.
Right, yeah. I
That's
think some of the most beautiful things in the opportunity to redesign that building would be to allow for the view from indoors to the outdoor area, which is beautiful there. So we could definitely work out something where we may even have sliders that can open up and make it a really beautiful building.
And just to hammer home this point, so there was consultants hired, there were charrettes, there was community outreach. The village council, before I was on council, approved a master plan for Coral Pine Park, and we have been slowly working towards completing all of the elements in that master plan, correct? And this is simply an additional element in the Coral Pine Park master plan, which was
Correct.
vetted and approved by previous council.
Correct.
Got
Let
it.
me
Thank you.
reiterate. I want to say something. None of this should be a surprise to anybody. When this group came into council, when who was elected in my year? Myself and council member
Me.
Hawk.
And Jim
I was
reelected.
reelected.
Right. When the three of us got elected, we knew that in the next 4 years, we had the potential to retire 2 bonds, right? And we set about to doing that and working our way through a 4-year process. And we did the Inspire Pinecrest, and we figured out all the projects. We continued the master plans from the previous mayor and council. And none of this is the evolution of basically 25 years worth of work that has evolved every 4 years as the councils have come in, right? The suggestion that we should stop the evolution right now would be basically shortcutting a lot of the work we've done for 4 years. We knew this was coming. We knew we were going to try to retire this bond, and we knew we were going to replace it because some of these parks have either never been touched or they're falling apart. And that's unacceptable in Pinecrest. And to delay that at a very low interest rate with 2% or whatever it is, it would be foolhardy. This is the culmination of a long process.
Right.
And that
And
type
to
of
go back to what someone mentioned before, as much as I miss seeing you all in person, I think with these Zoom meetings, it really has allowed more community input and more people to be able to participate and contribute to our plans, which we've been talking about for months. So I think that's also another positive benefit of COVID in this situation.
Yeah, I would agree. Months, years. We've been talking about these things for years. I mean, none of this creeped out nowhere. None of it. Some out for 20 years.
Joe, when I joined the council 8 years ago, I remember Coral Pine Park was one of the topics. And Guido, maybe you can refresh our collective. I can't remember, but I know we had multiple public hearings, lots of public input on this Coral Pine Park.
Okay, I'm
Vice
getting,
Mayor, as the manager previously indicated to you, it was a process. There was a
Right.
consultant who held charrettes in the neighborhood at the park, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah.
And then the council spent lots of time going through the plan and finally adopted a final master plan.
Right.
The new tennis center building was part of that plan. And
Yeah.
that was a first phase construction of that master plan.
Right.
I'm sorry, I gave some bad information. I'm going to ask Marie to clarify what is and isn't part of the bond. I don't know why I thought this was the entire bond. Marie, can you clarify what is in the bond and what isn't?
Yes, give me a moment and I will read it. I will just, Mayor, you were correct. It was 8 projects. The bond is the Coral Pine. There's 2 projects there.
That's the 133 and the 2 million.
2 million 3. Then the lights ball field is 85,000.
So this one,
Kitchen and storage 135,830.
hold on. Kitchen,
135,830.
135,830, here it is.
The Flagler Grove is 480, including that. Well, there's a grant for 400.
Right.
The EG Playground 145. The Upper Garden is 4,086,313. There's a grant for that one. The PG Garden Path Lighting 66,390. So those are the 8 projects, and then we did add one which is the PG Cypress Hall deck of 85,000.
Okay.
And then in addition, and included in here is, we have a calculated bond expense of about 120,000. And then the non-bond ones are the smaller ones, the PGAC break room in Banyan, that's 13,460. The PG hallway lighting, 11,170. The PG garage doors, 11,530. The PG master plan, 91,485. The PG stage monitors, 10,850. And the Evelyn Greer wall sconces, 10,000. So those are the non-bond. Those non-bond add up to 148,495.
Oh, I see what happened there. We put the two things together on this slide. Okay. I have a different location. So if there's any question, we can go back. I have a different location now that you said that, where we can split
And
this
so,
up.
and the Pinecrest Gardens projects are tied to the strategic plan and the master plan, which we regularly update.
Correct.
We workshop, we update, and we approve every year, every other year. Sometimes we've been approving updates to the strategic plan at Pinecrest Gardens. Is that correct?
Right. The master plan, yeah, that was a 5-year plan. It came before council, and council approved that botanical master plan for Pinecrest Gardens. Go ahead.
I want to say back in 2006 under that administration.
The Pinecrest Gardens botanical master plan stuff, we've done for at least 10 years. But the last time it came to council, and Alana can text me, I want to say it was 3 or 4 years ago, where council, because we usually do it on 5 by 5 years. And we just go through them. So we already know and anticipate what the expenditure is going to be 5 years out. And we just roll through those based on whatever the horticulturalist suggests.
So the master plan has to do with maintaining the botanical part and the improvements to the botanical part of the garden,
Correct.
which are very expensive, as anybody who's tried to maintain their own yard knows.
Right.
And then we have a strategic plan, which has to do with the operations and the usage and the mission and the vision of Pinecrest Garden, which also brings with it a certain level of capital improvement, because we have to be able to maintain and use and provide facilities in which to perform our strategic plan. And all of those plans are workshopped and vetted and approved by council year after year after year, correct?
There's nothing, the important part about this, right, is that we don't set a budget in a 1-year vacuum, right? It takes years and years for something to reach the council as a budgeted item, right? It comes up as an idea, right, that nobody's ever heard of. It gets workshopped. It gets put on a plan. It moves through the system. It gets prioritized. And when it's ready and the projects ahead of it have gotten done that may have been put in there 4, 5, 7 years in advance, then that project comes to fruition. For instance, the Upper Gardens has never been touched, right? It was the lowest priority project in the original Pinecrest Gardens master plan.
Right.
And 25 years later, it's time to do that project. So, I know it's hard to keep track of this stuff, but nothing sprouts up this year and needs to be done unless it's a life safety emergency that has to be fixed.
Right.
Correct.
So yeah, some of these projects go back to 6 years, when we did Inspire, when we originally talked about reissuing the bond, we had a finite amount of money. The council wasn't interested in reissuing the last issuance, going beyond what we had done in the past. We typically just retire one bond and reissue a new bond with the same amount of bonding capacity. So some projects had to be held off, and we just, we're trying to time it. If you go back in your mind to that other slide I had with the debt service, we have another debt that is set to expire, I want to say in 2025. So we're already looking at, what are the list of projects that can be held off to that time, and then just trying to parlay that with any grants that we might be able to get to just keep the ball rolling and replacing old bonds.
And as a matter of strategy, moving the same amount in and out of the bond column. So in this case, it's an $8 million bond that will be retiring early. There'll be net, if my calculations serve, a tiny savings, maybe $30,000. But I guess everything is money that goes into the pot. And we're reissuing a bond for $8 million. But when you run $8 million 10 years ago through an inflation calculator, that's the buying equivalent of $9 million. So we're actually giving ourselves a significant percentage less of purchasing power by sticking to the $8 million as opposed to issuing a $9 million bond, which would be a tit for tat.
Right. Even though construction costs are going up. So yeah, we are constantly trying to find, and that's, as part of the reason why some things have to be held off. The Upper Garden, I was receiving some text messages. So the Upper Garden construction, we started talking about back in 2018, when we talked about the ADA needs for the Upper Garden. We started going out for grants. We received some donations from private donors to redo the playground and restrooms. We, the village council had we hired a consultant to do a master plan for the Upper Garden that was presented to council back in 2018. I want to say November or December 2018. So this has been going forward slowly, trying to get some funding. Like I said, the Upper Garden construction project, we've already secured or in the process of securing about $300,000 worth of grants. Not to mention once we move forward, if we decide to move forward with that project, we're going to be going after many more that hopefully we can parlay and use to build out the project. So we may not necessarily have to spend all $4 million to do that project if we're lucky and can land some of the grants that we're anticipating this project will let us apply for and that we can hopefully get.
Yesterday was a good example of how Pinecrest plans things. We do things in a measured way. We dedicated the dog park. That has been discussed. I was walking out yesterday and a woman mentioned to me, I said, I've been around for 8 years, and we were talking about it then. She said, no, we've been talking about a dog park for more than that. Well, we don't do things quickly in Pinecrest. We think them out. We do it in a measured way, and we finally have a dog park. We didn't rush into it 8 years ago and put it to some place where people didn't want it. It just takes time to get these projects done. But that's how Pinecrest has always worked, in a very measured and thoughtful way, which is why we've been successful over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just have two quick things. I encourage, if any resident is wondering about the condition of the upper garden at the gardens, I encourage you to go over and take a look and walk around. I was surprised at the condition it's in, and I think it's our job to maintain that and make sure it's safe for everybody. It's a safety issue to me. The other thing is it possible to get a updated total on the bond projects and how that relates to the 8 million?
On the ones that we've already,
just to get for us in our minds to know what the bond projects are, since this is a combination of the bonds and the non-bonds.
Sure. Marie, can you send them quick emails with the list broken down to what is in the bond and which ones are not bond related?
Thank you.
Yossi, I sent it to you. Oh, I'll send it now. I'll send it out.
Send it to them so they have it, and then I'll pop it up on screen after we're done with this so that we can look at it if we want to continue discussing the bond a little bit further. I'll have up the accurate information split out. Okay. Other fund initiatives, as you know, we collect with new grant support. Hold on. If new grant support, I'm getting a question. If new grants support PG projects, is it possible to pay down bond without penalty? Yes. What we do when we issue a bond, by the way, is we issue it with the catch-all phrase that it also can be used for improvements to other municipal facilities. So any savings from any projects that are anticipated and actually listed would then go to miscellaneous facility improvements. And we would just try to identify other facility needs that could potentially be bumped up to use all that funding so that we don't go into arbitrage, because we must use the bond fund proceeds within 3 years of a bond being issuance to avoid arbitrage. Okay. Other fund initiatives, stormwater. As you know, the stormwater utility fund is funded by our stormwater utility fees. This is a basically placeholder. We have our stormwater master plan that council has approved. And we have in that master plan identified about $40 million worth of drainage projects for the village, with a priority of about $12 million. Over the course of the last 2 years, we've built out about 2 million of that $12 million priority list of projects. And so we're working our way through that priority listing. We will be providing council with the actual list of projects that are anticipated for the catch, the line item in the budget that just puts aside the money for actual construction of those drainage projects. Equally, in the transportation fund, we have funding that comes specifically through local option gas taxes. Maria, I didn't catch what you sent me. I'm sorry, I hit the delete by mistake, so don't worry. You can speak up if you want to share anything, Marie, and interrupt me if you need to. Okay. Transportation fund. The funding source that comes for the transportation fund is typically local option gas tax funds that can only be used for transportation type funding projects, whether it be, asphalt on roads, infrastructure, but things that have to do with our roadways and or transit type oriented projects. So these are just miscellaneous line item that catch and use up the funding that we have available. We have a village-wide transportation master plan that was approved by council at this point 2 years ago. We've been working our way through the list of the low-hanging fruit projects that are transportation-oriented, traffic calming type projects. We will be coming to council with a list, and I do have that list. If you all want to talk about it during the workshop, we can provide both the stormwater utility list as well as the transportation fund project list of the recommended projects for the use of that money. CITT is same thing. It's just a placeholder. We set. I had a question in the town hall that because we set aside 100,000 for sidewalks. We don't know necessarily where those sidewalks will be built, but we have just in a general sense repairs and maintenance to sidewalks. It's just a placeholder. Nothing that is specific. Council asked that we price out the cost of doing the bike shared use paths on Ludlam as well as Kendall Drive, and I have those numbers for council also to discuss later on in the workshop. So in total, all the capital projects, including everything that's happening in these other funds, when you look at both general fund plus all these funds, we're looking at over close to $11 million worth of capital projects that we would still be undergoing next year throughout the year. Okay, the millage rate, the proposed millage rate, this is what it means to an average person based on the 2.399 proposed millage rate. The average property owner in Pinecrest has a house with a taxable value of $833,000. So that individual is paying just shy of $2,000 to the village for all services that we provide.
Yossi, are there any homes in Pinecrest at the low end of the scale at that number, 137?
This 137 is the lowest taxable value property that we have. I couldn't tell you where this is located, but these are real numbers. The highest taxable value in Pinecrest is $6 million.
Yeah, that I get.
Imagine that it's likely one of the apartments, right?
This is a small, this is probably one of the condo, right?
Yeah.
Small condo.
Yeah. So yeah, these are reflective of actual real taxable values.
And could also be reflective of 20 years of Save Our Homes
Correct.
assessment suppression.
That don't allow it to go up. Right.
So if you have an older person who's been in their small apartment since incorporation, the taxable value on that will not be reflective of what its market value is.
Correct. Right. Okay. All right. Here we show basically what the different millage rates would do if we wanted to roll back or cut taxes in any way. For every 10 cents of mill rate, it generates about $489,000 worth of funding. So right now, as proposed, we're looking at ad valorem revenues being generated at 11,747,585. The rollback rate means what we would have to bring the tax down to bring ad valorem to be exactly bringing the same amount of money that I brought in for the current fiscal year. This mill rate is where you start requiring a majority if you wanted to go up, but I don't, if we were to go up in any way, you would have to re-advertise to all the homeowners. Same thing, like a super majority vote if we wanted to bring taxes a lot higher, which is not what we're recommending.
And you don't recommend any increase in our millage at all, correct?
No, I'm recommending maintaining the same, just like we did like that first or second slide that I showed that keeps us right just below what our highest mill rate historically, which was 2.4. So it just keeps us there for a third year in a row. Okay, general fund balance trends. So this basically shows you where we're at with regards to our reserves or balances at the end of the year. The dark blue represents what is still in flux with the FEMA appeal. We have met with state representatives that have advised that we're not likely to see a response from FEMA on the appeal until next year, sometime hopefully by April. But as you see, even with that, assuming that we lost it, which I don't think we will, but even in the worst case scenario where they say they will not reimburse us for that amount of money, this blue here, dark blue, represents about $1.5 million worth of funds that we spent in IRMA that have not been obligated by the FEMA for reimbursement. We would be looking at having our revenues would still be at these levels right below the dark blue. So as you can see, we're working up to be somewhere between, upwards of 7.5 million, which is this line right here.
But you're anticipating that we're going to get those funds.
Yeah, I have no doubt we're going to get those funds. And the reason I say that is because the way FEMA works, when you submit project worksheets, it's for time periods, certain number of months or dates in time periods, and FEMA has actually obligated and paid out the bookends to the same exact expenditures. So I think the appeal is a function of whatever reviewer looked at our paperwork and unfortunately has created this issue where they weren't understanding that the county actually moved the debris for us and disposed of the debris, and we just prepped the debris. When the tickets, what they consider tickets, when you take the debris to the dump and they show how much you actually took to the dump, it was looking to the reviewer like we had spent a gazillion dollars to move a very small amount of tonnage of debris, of vegetative debris, when in fact we had spent all this money to move over 200,000 tons of vegetative debris. And so I think that inability to understand, math and the explanations that were provided created the problem for us. Unfortunately.
But just to clarify here, the appeal, all the paperwork's been submitted. It's now being processed. Identical expenditures bookended to these expenditures have already been obligated.
Correct.
So the likelihood of reimbursement is exceedingly high, and that should happen in the next fiscal year.
Yes.
Correct?
And the state, in fact, the state, which is the first review of our appeal, already transmitted that appeal with a favorable recommendation to FEMA. And then the process is whoever the FEMA person that's reviewing it, they have over, I want to say 60 to 70 other cities in queue ahead of us to review their appeals. Some of these appeals go back to even before IRMA. That's how backed up FEMA is, unfortunately. But then in the worst case scenario, let's assume that they, whoever is doing that appeal doesn't approve those expenditures to the village, then we can appeal that decision to 3-panel of judges. And we would go before the judges and make our presentation. The issue with FEMA, I could tell you, because I worked in Katrina, post-Katrina, up in Mississippi and Louisiana, and a lot of these issues of why there's so much red tape in releasing this funding is because as a result of Katrina, there was a lot of misuse of public funds. There was a lot of just flat out theft, a lot of things that were not competitively bid, multiple $1 million contracts just awarded to, so-and-so's buddy. And so because of that, they've created a huge bureaucracy of checks and balances, and it's just made it very onerous to get funding back from FEMA.
So basically, this is why we have our cash reserves. We have the cash reserves so we can make the expense and we can
Correct.
deal with the storm event.
Right.
And then because we have plentiful cash reserves, we can sit on this understanding that it may take many years for
To get
FEMA
it
to
back.
make us whole
Correct.
and reimburse us,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is exactly why we reserve what we reserve,
Correct.
is exactly for this sort of scenario.
And to be even more clear than that, right? We've thought about these reserves. We have a certain amount for reserves, and we have a certain amount for hurricane reserves. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we have a slide on that. Let me see if it's, I believe it's,
So
here, I'll show you here which one it is.
ever since
This one.
1996, we've put in our comprehensive plan how much we want the reserves to be. And we live up to that. Now, we can change that in a year. We need more reserves or less reserves. We want to give money back, or we need more money for something. Those types of things are changeable, but they're not made up every year. They're historic, and we're living up to our goals in that respect. This is again nothing new.
Correct. This slide in particular shows you exactly what we've been doing. The red line is the recommended fund balance, including hurricane emergency set aside. So for best practices, anything that is, we at minimum must keep the red line, and everything above that is gravy, right? So in this case, if you recall, after Irma, I recommended we bump up the hurricane set aside to 3 million from 2 million. So if you look down here, these notes down on this bottom part, we always had just a $1 million surplus. In 2013-14, within a year of my becoming a manager, I recommended that we bump up the reserve from 1 million to 2 million, which council did. So that's where you see this shift right here, where it bumped up to this point here. And then based on what happened with Irma a couple years ago, I recommended that we bump up to 3 million, because we spent 3.2 in Irma, which was just a hurricane, a category 1 force type windstorm. So I realized that the cost of doing business from a recovery standpoint was going up, and we needed to bump up our hurricane set aside. So we have done that.
So over the past 20 years, we have increased our hurricane set aside from $1 million to $3 million.
Correct.
Basically seamlessly, without affecting our cash flows at all.
Correct.
And we're doing that as a matter of good internal principles.
Correct.
There is no outside agency which is ordering us to do this. We are imposing this upon ourselves out of a hyper level of conservatism.
Correct. The only thing that's not required, but recommended as a best practice is a 10% set aside. And that's recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association, that you set aside 10% of your operating expenditures as a reserve. We go way beyond that. We set aside, obviously now $3 million for hurricane. We're also, last year council designated, we had $317,000 of surplus that we also captured and now have set aside for future health insurance costs, so that any premium increases to employees are not borne by the employee, but rather by the village. So we have that additional built into that red line is an additional. So you have the 10% set aside for operating expenditures. You have a $3 million hurricane set aside, and then a $317,000 set aside for any health insurance premium increase.
So best practices say that we should keep 10%.
That's 10%.
In reserves. And if you totaled up all the reserves, hurricane, regular reserve, and the other thing, what percent is that of the annual budget?
About a third, it looks like.
Well,
More than 10, that's
operating.
the total, Marie, can you figure out the math on that?
Well, remember, we keep some in the bank. So at any certain point, we're above. If you put 10% in a year and you don't use that 10%, it sits in the bank, right? I mean, it doesn't say we have to put 10% in a year. It says we should maintain a balance of 10%.
We maintain the balance, right? So it's just carried over every year. And
But
so,
we're still putting the 10% in it every year.
oh yeah, for sure. That's part of that red line. So it's not compounding, it's just there. Does
Right,
that make
so-
sense?
How much do we have in the cumulative account for reserves right now?
In the cumulative account for as based on our recommended budget, we'll have just $8.7 million.
As
And our
opposed to about so $8.7 million total reserve.
1.5 of which is tied up with FEMA. So again, because we're talking budget, not accrued accounting, right? So
In terms of cash on hand, we're talking about $6.5 million cash on hand, right?
correct,
Sitting in the bank, where best practices would tell us we need 10% of our operating budget, which is about $2.5 million.
correct.
So we have almost tripled our reserve based on our internal principles and strategies.
Correct.
So at that point, right, the debate becomes legitimate to say, well, how much money of the people you want to keep in the bank, right? Your goals only say 10%. You've got close to 30% or close to 40%. At what point do you start to give money back to the people because you're just nesting? I mean, if our goal said 40%, we would be great.
Right.
But so somebody can make the argument you're over reserved based on your goals.
I would argue that on the flip side, I believe the fact that we have these reserves is what's ensured that we were bumped up to a AAA rating from a bond perspective. I want to say 4 years ago at this point, for the first time in our history. And I think it is because we've been doing this.
I think it was 2017. I think it was 2017. I think it was after the first fiscal year that Joe and I were on council that we got our AAA rating.
The AAA rating, right?
Well, we know the reason. That's because the two of you came on council.
I hadn't thought of that before, but you might be right. No,
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
I'm just teasing.
So yeah, I think, and you know, and some of that, the reason we did get the three AAA bond rating is also because we have a history of paying down our bonds early. That also contributes to all that. They watch all of that. They're constantly monitoring us. They look at our auditing reports. And so, you know, we've been good stewards of the public's finances. So I would argue it.
And you know, for any of us who've walked the village campaigning, realize that the vast majority of residents are very pleased with the way Pinecrest government is run. You know, no one's out there complaining about we have too much in reserve or our millage rate is too high. It's just not happening. It hasn't happened.
And I just, going back to this slide, I just want to point out some of these dips in here was because we actually paid for some projects out of reserves, capital projects, which is also allowed by our financial policies. Okay.
Well,
All right.
being over reserved, tremendous flexibility. There's so many advantages.
Right. So you see these little dips here for over the years, we have done that. Sometimes we go into reserves and use reserves to just pay for capital projects with cash as opposed to incurring debt. Okay, this is just a slide to show you what our trends have been over the years from a revenue, resource perspective in comparison to our expenditures. So Hurricane Irma, this dip that took us beyond the trend was the hurricane expenditures, which bumped us over from an expenditure side. Otherwise, we're right on target. The same thing you can see here. This basically shows you the difference between what we budget and what we then actually spend. Since 2009, you can see that all our budgets, the difference between what we're budgeting and then actually spending is typically below 5%.
So we're basically getting better and better at hitting our mark in terms of our budgeting.
We're not right. We don't have a lot of wiggle room. So basically what happened is since the recession and we took austerity measures, we've been very tight. We haven't been growing our budgets. We've been just keeping a flat, and truer sense of what the budget is, what we're asking for from a budgetary perspective, and then what actually does get spent. There's very small difference in reality. Okay, general fund proposed projects. This is this chart is basically showing what we have traditionally over the years used to transfer out of general fund into capital fund specifically for capital budget, capital outlay type projects. And this year, like Marie said, it was only about $148,000 that we are anticipating will need to come out of general fund into capital fund for those smaller projects that she mentioned earlier. So this is exclusive of any bond project.
So that's this email that talks about a lot of lighting, right? So we're talking about wall sconces, stage mirrors, hallway lighting,
Right.
An AC for the break room at Pinecrest Gardens, roll up garage doors. I mean, these are $10,000 and $15,000 line items that add up to $148,000, correct?
Right.
If I may, just the transfers are 125,000. Since we had a little bit of the reserve, we didn't have to transfer the full 148.
Okay, thank you, Marie. But the project's total 148. We're just paying for them out of some of the balance that was remaining in that.
Yes.
In that fund. Okay. Thank you, Marie. Any questions on this? Okay, we already went through this. Okay, and then this is the final slide on this part, which is just how our tax dollars look in comparison to other taxing jurisdictions. So the one that's closest to us, but slightly a little bit more, is what we pay the Miami-Dade County Fire Service.
So we pay more as a part of our total property tax bill to fire rescue than we pay to the Village of Pinecrest.
That's correct.
And we pay 2.5 times to the school board what we pay to the Village of Pinecrest.
Correct.
And to the library,
in
Miami-Dade County, yeah, we're talking 175%.
Yep.
Right.
It's pretty impressive.
Yet, when anybody has a complaint about the fire department, the school board, or the library, they call us.
Yeah. I wonder how many times Xavier Suarez has answered a constituent's phone call about a complaint about EMS or service at the library.
I can probably answer that question relatively correctly.
All right.
Not going to.
Okay, so all right, so let me go through our budget. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to go through each department. Is that good?
Sure.
Just to give you guys a little snapshot of what's happening. We have the details that the detail worksheets. I'm just using this because it looks fancier and nicer for folks watching on YouTube. But if we need to get into the nitty gritty, we have the worksheets.
I have a quick question for Guido. Guido, can we tell how many people are watching?
It's minimal, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Okay.
I cannot tell on our live stream. That question came up a few meetings ago, and there's no ability to see. And on YouTube, it's just a handful of viewers.
I understand. Well, that's good. Just curious. That's good though.
I hear there's tons of people watching, Jim, more than ever before, really.
Yeah, I know.
But the advantage of this as well is that, of course, everything's taped and anybody can sit around while they're cooking dinner and watch it at their leisure.
Boy, I don't know. You know, that's just an interesting. Watching this while you're cooking dinner, that would ruin your appetite.
It would.
Jim, that's what I did for years before I was elected. For 2
I
years,
see.
I attended in person. And then for about a year and a half before then, it's what I did every night while I was cooking dinner.
There
Well,
you
that-
go.
Yeah,
No
Councilmember
comment.
Bokemer is correct. The archive of this video is available both on our website and on YouTube at the conclusion of the meeting.
Good. I'll watch it tonight when I'm cooking dinner.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
sorry, guys. I'm just going through, trying to find the snapshot. Okay, let me just show you. So this here is a snapshot. This is the general fund summary. So it's just going to give you a snapshot real quick of what our beginning balances is for the proposed fiscal year. This is for the general fund. This is where what we're looking will happen from a revenue perspective. So we'll have 33.9, just shy of 34 million available. But that includes the prior year balance forward, which is the general fund, which is the reserve. Okay. This is a snapshot of what's happening by each department. And then I'm going to go through each department and what we've done to, in some cases, lower or heighten each of the departments. So let's start with council budget. Were there any questions before I move on the general fund revenues? Did you all want to go through that in more detail, or are you good with what I've provided? I can scroll through this real quickly. The categories, I did go just in a general sense what was happening when I did the slides. Are there any questions on any of the revenue stuff? Are we good with what we're proposing? Okay.
And just so that the viewership can follow along, as the manager is currently doing, the budget's available on our website, www.pinecrest-fl.gov/budget.
Right, and anyone that wants to take a look, this document is really a great source of information. If you want to torture yourself and read everything that's in there, it actually will give you the projection rationale for each of these revenue sources, why we're doing it the way we're doing it. And we if anyone wants to follow up with any questions, they can also submit those questions to me via email after the meeting, and I'm happy to respond to all those questions. Okay, so I'm just scrolling down to start with council budget, and give me 1 second. There we go, council budget. Okay, I'm gonna just look at, okay, here we go, council budget. Gil, can you help? Can you see if Angela's on the waiting room and have her come in so she can tag team with me on what?
Yes, she's coming in now.
Okay. Angela, are you in? Is she in yet? I can't see her. Angela, you're in? She's on mute.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. What I wanted you to do is, as we're going through this, if you can pull up just in case, you know, the worksheets, so I kind of get a sense of what's hitting these accounts if I'm wrong, because I'm going by memory, so that you can tag team with me. Okay. Of why certain things are lower. I know it's in the budget highlights, so you might be able to also kind of just tag team why these numbers are going up or down. Okay. If I'm wrong on my things. Okay. Okay. In the council budget, the professional services, the line item, this line item is representative of the lobbyist services. So we kept that amount the same as what we had last year, which is $40,000. I'll be coming with a recommendation to council at the next regular meeting for lobbyists based on everyone's input on that issue. Other contractual services stayed the same as current fiscal year. Where we did, look, Angela, there's a little typo here in the travel thing. There's an extra space, make a note. The travel, you saw a huge decrease. We did bump it down just because typically we have about $5,000 per council member set aside for travel and to conferences and whatnot. But because of the pandemic, we've just cut out travel and per diem in a general sense across all departments, including council. We just left a little bit of money in there, you know, for like Day League of Cities in the event that they start meeting in person again at some point in the middle of the next fiscal year. I left a little bit of wiggle room there. Other current charges, what is our other current charges, Angela? What is that paying for? Is that where we pay for
the refreshments for the committees and the State of the Village
State
address?
of the Village, right? So based on the pandemic, I am not anticipating that we're going to have a State of the Village in the same way that we did it last year or the last several years, where we had like an actual physical event. My dropping this amount is anticipating that we're going to do State of the Village virtually. So there is not going to be any cost involved to that event, as well as any, we always had money set aside for committees, you know, food and stuff that we would spend when we would have committee meetings and such. Since everything's happening virtually, I'm anticipating that for a good part of next year, we'll continue to function in that way. And then the savings in publication dues and training is also tied to conference fees. Since we're not going to be going and traveling, there aren't any conferences to pay for. So that's that little bit of drop there. Aid to government agencies, we have some savings here specifically because we had budgeted funding for a graphic designer to do the brochure, the school brochure, but we've done it in-house. So we were able to save that funding from the outsourced graphic designer. And then aid to government, community support. Typically, we put aside $10,000 for community events. And I dropped that significantly because my assumption is that next year they're still not going to be having a lot of community type festivals and events because of the pandemic. So I shaved off a good amount of money in this for the council budget. Just, I guess, $33,000 roughly that we were able to save from the council's budget. So this affects you all. So I don't know if you're happy with my recommendation or if you want to make any suggested changes on any of these issues.
I think it's reasonable. I don't think I'm certainly not going to be traveling to League of Cities, National League of Cities events this year. And it doesn't look to me like the League of Cities is going to start meeting in person very soon, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're moving into a very stay-at-home sort of year. Makes perfect sense.
The national NLC was supposed to have their annual conference in Tampa, and it's all virtual this year. So I see the same in next year as well.
Right. Okay. So moving on, we have the manager's budget. So what you'll see in the manager's budget includes, okay, just in a general sense, every department is split up in three different categories. In the office of the manager specifically, we don't have a capital outlay category, but you'll see in every department budget, there's the category that's made up of personal services, which has all the costs that are benefits and salary oriented type costs. And then the operating expenditures is the widgets, the cost of everything that is not salary related or benefit related. And then capital outlay is what that means. Okay, so in the case of the manager's budget, the increases that you're seeing here already have that 5% included. It does not include any increases, any increase for me. But the personal service totals here that you're seeing already account for that 5% that's been awarded to all the employees that fall under my office's budget. In the operating expenditure side of things, you'll see a savings that on the travel and per diem, because we did cut all travel and per diem. for conferences and the like. Same thing, the savings in the publication dues and training is the savings that's attributed to any conference fees that would have hit that line item. So in total, Marie, do you know, can you say what percentage the manager's budget increased? So we saw,
Yes,
go ahead,
1.4 in total, 10,805.
10,805. Thank you, Marie. Okay. Any questions on the manager's budget? Okay, clerk's budget, same sort of thing. Clerk's increase is not included, but he has two people that fall under his office, which is the ADA compliance officer, as well as the assistant permit clerk. So in total, oh, and the one thing that I wanted to show is there's revenues that are attributed to things that are done by the clerk's office, namely lien searches. So we're anticipating recommending that from a revenue perspective. Look, Angela, there's a typo here. This is a different font, I think, here. That from a revenue perspective, there's a slight decrease in the amount of lien searches that are going to be done next year. Okay. From an expenditure standpoint, these numbers already reflect the 5%. And then operating expenditures, you see a big bump up this year, and namely in other contractual services that is attributed to the election. So every election year we see increase in this line item specifically. Otherwise, everything else is staying the same. Travel and per diem was taken out completely, so there's no expenditure on that part. So in total, the village clerk currently is how many? What's the difference? 30,000.
An increase of 29,500 or 8%. And I just want to make sure that there was no increases given to the clerk. It was just the other two.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on the clerk's office expenditures? Okay, finance. Finance, we're looking at, okay. Again, this does already include the 5% across the board to all the employees for the finance department. The finance department has the director and two accounting clerks. And then the operating expenditures, some of the savings in the operating expenditures came from the need to not do the removal of single audits that were included in this year's budget that we don't need to repeat every single year. So there was a savings in that particular line item because of the removal of the single audits. The travel and per diem was removed. And then savings again in the conference fees side of things. Office supplies. One of the things we used to spend money on was on the bills, mailing out bills and whatnot. Office supplies, we didn't put any funding for this year, even though it's showing that we had an expenditure. Marie, can you explain this?
This is when we originally, this 12-month estimate was done back in April. And this is when we went in and purchased the laptop, which is actually going to be covered under the CARES County portion. So that's the 12, that's what that was, because we didn't have any other line. So we normally don't have office supplies. That goes under general government for us.
Okay. Any questions on so overall that department decreased by how much?
11,420 or 2.9%.
All right. Village attorney. So village attorney overall, they are, this is contracted out services. They don't have in-house staff. You'll note that we overall are seeing a decrease of how much, Marie?
60,000 or 12%.
12% decrease. If you look at our 12-month estimates, this will give you an idea of what is actually being spent for this current year's budget. A lot of the expenditures this current year were pandemic related. And because of that, those pandemic related expenditures are being coded not to the general fund budget, but to a like FEMA reimbursable or CARES Act reimbursable fund. So because of that, you're seeing a decrease here in the 12-month estimates of what we're anticipating is actually going to be spent. But a big portion of the COVID related legal fees would have hit the second line here, which are now going to be reimbursed for CARES Act. But with that said, even if you looked at our trends prior to the pandemic, we were trending less expenditure from a legal retainer perspective. The prior year, we saw just $215,000 expenditure from legal fees. So we were able to drop that.
And in terms of cash flow, CARES Act money has to be dispersed before the 30th of December, correct?
That's correct.
So that's all going to be coming within this calendar year.
Right. Council just approved my signing the the maintenance of understanding agreement with the county. That's going to be submitted today, and then we've already submitted for reimbursement. So that's going to start. We're going to start seeing that fund come in before the end of this fiscal year. Any questions on the village attorney concerns with this budget? Okay, next is general.
Can I just ask a question about that CARES money? How certain are you that we're going to be getting that? Is it like FEMA that it could possibly be denied and then we have to go through a process?
No.
Okay.
In fact, we've already gotten approval on those expenditures. Like everything that we've done FEMA related, because because of what happened in Irma, what we started doing was actually getting pre-approval before we would actually even spend any funding that was COVID related, to ensure that they had no issue reimbursing us the funding. So before we put up the banners on US1, we were sending them like, this is what we're gonna do. Will you reimburse this? And then the CARES Act reimburses the local match. So it's not even coming out of our coffers. That's 75 million that they set aside at the county for that match. Is automatic with the FEMA. And then, the 25 million is on the projects, the ones that council just discussed a couple of days ago.
Okay.
Right. And the way the county has set up the CARES versus FEMA is they've brought in a consultant, and the consultant's actually doing a pre-approval of what each municipality submits.
Right.
And their turnaround time is less than 48 hours at this point.
Right.
So they look through what you're doing. They say, this is FEMA, this is CARES. All the paperwork's in order. We understand what you're doing. The description of what you've done is clear. You have the green light to go ahead and submit this. And because the money out of CARES has to be dispersed before the 30th of December, the payments are coming out in an ongoing fashion. The county indicated they're going to be cutting checks twice a week for all the cities. So this will be an ongoing thing as we submit it. They might ask for additional documentation, kind of like what FEMA does to us, but we already have all that. So we just submit that to them electronically. They review it, and then they process the payment to the village. And one of the great things about how they're managing these funds is that it's not like FEMA where you have to make the expense and send all your paperwork in and then wait for all of this reimbursement to happen. You can send it in over and over and over again ongoing. So your cash flow isn't impacted. You can keep submitting and resubmitting. If you have your paperwork in order and you're efficient enough, you can submit every single week for reimbursement. So you're not carrying that expense on your back as you move through the process.
Sounds like some good practices that FEMA could possibly start using.
That's what there's rumor. Yes, we laugh. I see Marie laughing because she's the one that's miserable with FEMA and everything. We like talk about pulling your hairs out. She could tell you horror stories if you want to hear about it. But there's rumor that they're gonna try to do a more automated approach for FEMA, that we're based on our conversations with the state rep. They told us that that's what they're moving towards. Marie, I saw that you wanted to talk. Did you want to say anything on this issue?
I just wanted to say that not all our projects are approved yet, because they have so many counties. Every day we're getting an email, this one's approved, this one's approved. Some say needed more information, and what they explained is that they just loaded them all and they're still going through it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they need more from us, but that they're going through it. So something that was said more information yesterday, today was approved. So I do believe that everything we've given them should be approved, but I just wanted to clarify, not everyone has gotten the official approval yet.
Okay.
But we are watching that. There's actually another training today, and then we're going to start tomorrow uploading everything after my staff has gone through the training today, and we're going to start uploading everything we have, and we have all our live information through 8:15. So we will be putting everything through, and it's exactly as stated earlier. You can piecemeal. We have this check, put it in. You keep adding to it. So we will be on this practically daily as things come through.
And is the CARES money pot first come, first serve, or is there a cap per municipality, or how does that work?
First come, first serve. So we are running to get our stuff in. So we're not holding back. We're going in. Same thing with the pitch of the ideas for those programs that we talked about at the special meeting last week. We got to get that in, get that approved as quickly as possible, because it's competitive and it's first come, first serve. It's like
speaking of which, allow me to interject, because I had a misunderstanding with staff, which became clear to me. When we went through the 5 different proposals at that meeting last week that we were going to write white papers on and seek approval for, staff understood that we skipped over free COVID testing, and we did not approve staff seeking CARES Act funding for that. Can I just ask the other council members, are you okay with staff submitting for free COVID testing? Because we approved all the other ideas, but apparently we didn't explicitly say, yes, you can seek free COVID testing.
right. The ideas that we understood had been approved was the rent abatement for the business community, the advertising, social media training for the businesses to help economic recovery. We had the school programs at the village parks, like a subsidy for people that showed economic impact. And then we had the federal art project concept that we were going to submit.
And I went through and looked at the tape of that meeting, and we never discussed COVID. We never said yes or no to COVID. We just skipped right over it and started talking about the other ones. So I just wanted to get consensus from the rest of the council. They're okay with seeking approval for free COVID testing.
Free COVID testing for who?
For anybody who seeks it. We're simply trying to provide free COVID testing at Municipal Hall so that we can keep the provider here. People are happy with the service. The system has been working well. We want to keep enough volume that they don't abandon our site. And then Pinecrest goes back to being a place where you can't get local COVID testing.
So what you're saying is that the CARES Act would replace replace what we're paying for the test.
Right now, the tests are coming in where people either have to pay cash if they don't have insurance, or insurance companies are getting charged. The difference between our site and say like what you see at Hard Rock is that those sites are providing free COVID testing. So if we wanted to provide free COVID testing, what would likely happen is you would see more people come through here. People with or without insurance would come in and avail themselves of that. The difference is, my expectation is we would have to pitch the idea to the county and say, can we get X amount of money, right, for COVID testing? If they approve, say, $500,000 for free COVID testing, then we would apply that until it runs out. And then at that point, we go back to the system that we have right now.
Oh, okay.
Is everyone okay with doing that?
I am.
My thought was that COVID testing was lower on the totem pole of the ones that we agreed about. And I just wonder if adding it to the mix would possibly negate getting one of the other ones of higher priority. Or is that not?
I have no idea what to expect. I think once we submit the paper, I'm still getting pricing for like the different elements that we were going to go after. Based on what I'm seeing, I don't know that all of our projects will even get approved. So submitting as many as we can, I think, and then letting them tell us which ones are yes and no kind of thing, we can take that approach and see what we can get. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we're good? We're going to go in that direction then?
Yeah, I'm fine with submitting to see if the county gives us approval for that. Again, all we're doing is submitting paperwork with ideas for programs that we'd like to administer, and the county and the consultant will tell us yes or no.
By the way, going a little off topic, I was listening to some news reports where they're talking about now the issue of flu season coming up and the effects of the pandemic on people not necessarily feeling comfortable to go get flu shots. So I was curious, and we don't need to get into this discussion today, but one of the things I was thinking of was approaching the vendor that's doing the drive-through, since they have nurses there, to see if they would be interested in adding flu shots to, and I don't know that they can or they're would be willing to do this, but as a service through that drive-through process where, because one of the things that they're saying on in a general sense is when flu season comes, that they're pushing, the CDC is really pushing for people to get flu shots specifically this year, because that's one thing we do have vaccines for, and would help with the health situation and keeping impacts on our hospital beds down if people actually get flu shots. But they have concerns that that they're looking at potentially a decrease of 15% of people that get flu shots or something like that, because of the issues that they have concerns of going to see a doctor in person, like everybody's doing telemedicine and that sort of thing. So just putting that in the back of your minds, because I heard of that this morning, and I thought I wanted to kind of look and see if that's something we could explore with our drive-through testing site.
Do we have any numbers as to how many Pinecrest residents versus non-residents are using the drive-through here?
I'd have to find out. Eddie, if you're on the call, if you can text me that, if you know the answer to that question. I don't know that we.
I'm just curious.
That, but all the department heads are listening in, so he'll text me the answer if we have that. Okay, moving back onto budget. Any questions with the village attorney stuff? Retainer agreement, just to remind you guys, this is a pass-through. So on the revenue side, this gets charged to the developers. Marie, you had a question?
It's not 100%. Just wanted to clarify that some of the things that are in there, and Steve does, Mr. Olmsted does go through and review it, not 100% pass through, but the ones that he can, he does.
Oh yes, right. The anything that has to do with legal work on large development projects do get reimbursed, because we cover that cost through the developers. But for a person that is like a general, resident who might be doing some work in their homes, the cost of reviewing their development would not be a pass through, and they would not incur that additional cost. Okay. All right. Next is general government. Okay. So general government, let's see what we're doing. Here we go. Personal services overall went up from 522 to 550. Operating expenditures saw a decrease. Angela, you're going to have to help me here what these numbers are showing, just because I don't know off the top of my head where these decreases came from. Can you pull that up and go over that?
On the professional services, the decrease was that we had budgeted for a compensation study, and that's not in this
Oh, that's
year.
happening in this current years. So we were able to do the compensation and pay study where we review every so often all our salaries, all the positions, and we compare them to other cities just to make sure that we're in the range that we want to be in from a compensation perspective. Okay. Travel and per diem, obviously everything cut out. Communications and freight services. This is mostly postage is what hits this account. So we're looking at lowering that amount just based on trends. If you see 2 years ago, we only spent 26,000. This year, we're only anticipating 30. So we just dropped this amount.
Yossi, what's freight services? You told me once before, but I just don't remember.
It's like when you send Federal Express, UPS, those are called.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay. Utility services is,
As we're going through these, it sounds to me like a lot of the small decreases in operating expenses aren't necessarily structural. They're situational because of COVID. Like we're cutting out travel and per diem, not because we're basically eliminating that category, and not because we don't foresee in the future doing travel and having per diems, but because right now we're having a pandemic, and so we don't foresee in the next fiscal year having to do that, correct?
correct.
Okay, so what we're talking about in terms of the expense side is heavily situational and not structural.
That's correct.
Got it.
Insurance, this one was a huge savings. We had anticipated that we were going to be getting a 25% increase in insurance premiums based on what our carrier had advised us, 3 months ago. Because of that information, we decided to put this out to bid. And in response to that bid, the current provider came in with a premium cut, ironically, to keep our business. So we found some savings there. So this is a true number. And with the same carrier that we had, that we're spending $602,000 on this year, next year we actually saw savings on that. So that was a good amount of money that we were able to shave off there. Repairs and maintenance other is dropped by what, Angela, do you recall?
That's mainly maintenance to the municipal center. Since it's a 15-year-old building, for the past couple of years, we've been adding money for it, repairs, and we've done so much work in the past year. We anticipate that next year it'll be less.
Okay. Printing and binding. Okay. Promotional activities, we're just dropping that to, that's one of those things where we spend money on print material and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff we're doing now is all electronic based. So we just shaved off some funding there. Let me see, anything else that's big. Office supplies, we just dropped. A lot more people are just working from home. We're not using supplies the same way because we have a lot of people working remotely. And then publication.
How is that working for our employees? I mean, if they're not using our office supplies, they're using their own.
Everything is being done electronically. We're just not doing things. They're not printing things. It's just not the same. We're just not functioning the same way. So until we get back to working physically in the building, there's all these little tweaks. Like we can, like I know for a fact, just anecdotally, offices are closed and no lights are on. So I know there's going to be savings from an electricity standpoint. So there are things that just because people are not physically here and, will trickle down effect on the savings side of things. As it does for the employee, because they don't have to spend money traveling to and from work. Like, so it's like a interesting.
But again, it's situational. It's not systemic.
Correct. Right. Yeah, the positive sides, obviously it keeps us safe here from an operational perspective. As much as we can work remotely, it's not the same. Not having, for example, Angela here, where when I need something, being able to get up, or Guido, it does have an impact internally, operationally, where it's not as efficient. But overall, it's working, and we can still get our jobs done. The department heads take turns coming in.
But you're not suggesting that the village government move remotely permanently.
Not permanently,
experience, correct?
No.
I think a lot of people are discovering lots of areas of life where a permanent move to virtual may not be the best idea.
No, well, and I'm a prime example of that. I have 2 toddlers at home. There's no way I could I do my work arguably from work home? Yes, but no. I like coming in every day and getting away from my toddlers. All right. Publication dues and training. The majority of that has to do with cutting convention costs. And we also cut back what there, Angela, that's a big amount.
The tuition.
Oh, the tuition. Thank you. So last year we reinstated the tuition reimbursement program. It was based on an amount. It was the first year we were reinstating it. So we asked everyone that might be interested in doing tuition reimbursement to let us know. We put in that number, but then what actually transpired was a lot less than what we had thought was going to happen from people actually availing themselves of that money. So we were able to shave off some money there. So in total, oh, and here, capital outlay, whatever we spent this year, we're not re-spending next year. So because of those tweaks, we saw a decrease in the amount of
221,325 or 13%.
15% savings in that. Okay, any questions on general government? Okay, IT. Same thing, 5% is already included up here. The only position that hits the IT department is Gabriella Wilson, the IT manager. The other IT position hits police because it's they're used more on the police side exclusively. Okay, operating expenditures. We dropped out the travel and per diem. We have some increases in repairs and maintenance because this is where we hit maintenance costs for software packages or systems that have been put on the cloud. So those maintenance costs have gone up from those third-party providers. And then on the equipment and machinery, we have some savings here. So for a total increase in information technology of
66,425, and it's 15%.
15%. So this is the second most largest increase in expenditures.
Can I ask a question about the cloud transition?
Sure.
So that increase, is that both the setup and the maintenance, or is the majority the setup, or how is that going to affect going forward? Is it going to be
here in this maintenance is just the maintenance. It's the maintenance agreement with those cloud-based services. The actual work has already happened. So we are already on the cloud. And I hope if I'm giving misinformation, I'm sure Gabby will text me a quick, and if you have any more questions, she can get on the call because she's on.
Yeah, so going forward, it will be around that same amount.
Right. Angela, do you have the worksheet for this? Am I giving the right information based on what I'm saying?
I have it as an upgrade to the financial services, like the maintenance for that. I can look up the worksheet. I don't know the specifics.
Is Gabby on the call, Guido?
Yes, I'm letting her in now. There is about a 30-second lag. So,
okay.
So she's in, but she might not realize she's in for about 30 seconds.
Okay. Hopefully she's paying attention and isn't hanging out in her PJ.
No, that's what happened to me. Caught me completely off guard. I look up and I'm on the screen.
Is she on yet? Gabby, are you there? She's connecting to audio. Hold on. She's still connecting. Okay, I don't know why it's taking so long. Guido, is there an issue with her connection? Okay, she's not.
I'll connect with her, and if you want to just come back to the question.
All right, I'll come back to IT. We'll move on. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then when we get her back on, she's having issues, I can see getting online. Okay. PD. Okay, PD. What you'll see in PD is okay, here we go. Okay, from a revenue perspective, where we have seen a decrease on some of the things that would typically offset the costs of PD. We did see an increase in the grant. If you recall, we had a COVID grant of about 101,000. We always have a grant of 25,000 for the vests, ballistic vests. But we got a little bit of an influx in new revenue there from COVID. The MOU of school board is for the reimbursement for our school resource officer. We had actually inadvertently made a mistake and in the last budget and had only budgeted for one resource officer instead of two. So from a 12-month estimate in, this number here needs to be updated, Angela. We're actually going to be getting $140,000 from the school board for the school resource officer for the current year. Next year, we're going to leave it at 70 just because we're not using the school resource officer. So we just left that number, just budgeting for one instead of two that we actually have, because we're anticipating we're not going to go live with the schools and actually get reimbursed for the school resource officer.
Let me just interject because I go to safety meetings at the Miami-Dade County School Police Department. And I was under the assumption that they had almost completed hiring and they wouldn't need to use municipality officers as much going forward. Is that not the case? Assuming we go back to school?
They have not advised us that we would no longer have to provide the school resource officer. So 2 of our patrol officers are assigned to school resource officer duties when school comes back. Otherwise, they're just regular patrol. So if they go in that direction, then this revenue source would obviously be affected. We wouldn't be getting any money from them if they decide to do away with the village being the provider of the school resources.
Yeah, that was pre-COVID, so things might have changed.
Right.
Well, and the reimbursement is also new. The reimbursement it came about post-Parkland. And so this was a way that the Miami-Dade County Public Schools could cover the mandate from the state to have a police officer at each one of the schools without having enough police officers in the public schools police force to do it. So we've been doing this since we incorporated. We're simply, I guess, discovering a new revenue source because of the post-Parkland situation and getting any reimbursement at all.
Right.
This could disappear and we would go back to the status quo, which has been the status quo for 20 years.
Right. Guido, can you go letting Jason into the call on the police stuff? Let me just go real quick back to the IT stuff. Gabby, you're on mute. Can you take yourself off mute real quick? We were looking at IT. Council member Abbott had a question just about the cloud and what's happening with our systems and how this is impacting the line item for repairs and maintenance in particular.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. The repairs and maintenance always goes up. There's, it's just the way we do business. There's one big change that we are migrating our financial application from on-premises to the cloud. And the reason why it's a big jump, because we're basically leveraging all the equipment, security, backup, and all that goes into the system and we currently pay for. Now it's going to be paid for the cloud. So it's a software as service, if you want to call it, and that basically the monthly payment will be, annual will be like that from this point forward. But we decided to do it because at this point, we either they're asking us to migrate to the new version just to be covered. And with the equipment that we have is not supported. So we're going to have to make a big investment in equipment and license and all that at the end, it just lasts for like 2-3 years. And then we're having to do the same thing. And Marie can attest that most of the time, because we're already run out of space and everything for the software, we are experiencing some latency and it's slow and it freezes and we're having this issue with this. Or we're also always on the latest update of the application and we don't have restrictions to be able to move to the next one. And we needed to be done. Actually, I started conversations with them already in October because by December, we have these big updates because we have to be ready for the W-2s in January. So that's one of the main reasons.
Okay, so what happens is we have these, I guess, software packages that we work with that provide, in this case, what she's talking about is the financial backbone of all our finance for the village. That application currently is housed in-house with hardware, actual servers and computers that are here on site. The cost of the hardware of those equipment, that those computers, anytime that the software folks are updating their applications, they have minimum requirements of machinery that you need in order to operate their applications. That was going to require a huge cost outlay, capital outlay on the hardware to support those updated applications. And so we're parlaying, instead of investing money in hardware, we're just going to use the same funding and flip it to move everything to a cloud-based
There's basically the same company hosting it.
It's the same company, right? But now they take care of any hardware improvements that have to occur to support the systems. But now everything is on the cloud as opposed to being physically on site, right?
Also takes the advantage, you know, whenever there's a hurricane or anything, we have money because they have also the redundancy in the different locations for services.
Right. So going to the cloud, not just with the finance, but finance software package, but any of we have CRW where we run our building and planning department, all these large, I guess, software applications, wherever we can bump them into the cloud environment from right, from a security standpoint, and even from a redundancy, from a resiliency standpoint, it's a much better environment because those companies have built-in redundancy in areas that would not necessarily be impacted by a hurricane or large events.
Yossi, then the hardware that we have at Village Hall, do we just get rid of it?
Yes, that goes offline. And
we do, but in this case, because this is server space, we reuse whatever we have and we reallocate for existing servers that we still have on site. For example, the CRW for this fiscal year, we're not migrating it to the cloud. We could wait another year before we do that. I'm talking about CRW is the building application, and we're gonna do next year. So all this free space that is left from these servers that are gonna be migrated to the cloud for the financial, basically we allocate those resources to these other servers that are important. So it's not that we no longer use them, we still use them because they
provide memory space, right, to run these other applications.
We need hard drive, we need disk space, we need memory, all those resources. Just the financial application was a very heavy application. The system we have in place, the virtual environment, it's basically smart hardware that it knows to allocate more resources to one application or the other, depending, like if there's no so much usage in one server, they take up resources and they move it to the one that needs it the most. The problem with the financial application is that the requirements were so heavy and did not allow us to do that dynamic move of resources from one server to the other. The application required that you give them steady, fixed resources, which will take a lot from the other servers. And so it was a disadvantage for us because it was pretty much, let's put it at this way, if you have 100% for usage, we had to put 60%, even if they're not using it all the time, we have to allocate a 60% just to the financial application. And it wasn't, and every time we get a new update, they require more and more. So that's why I decided it's best just to do and go with them. They have their servers, they have the services, and we'll just move with them.
So bottom line is, going forward, that number will be higher, if not increasing every year.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, I would say that going cheap on anything that has to do with IT is just bad policy, because we all know bad IT ends up costing small cities like ours millions and millions of dollars every time we lose our data, or we get ransomware, or we get hijacked, or we collapse.
Right.
So I say do what we have to do to keep the data safe, because we can't function without it.
Yep, totally agree.
And we have done a lot for cybersecurity. As you know, we've even put you all through some training to help that, we get, I don't know how many attacks on a monthly basis. I want to say tens of thousands of potential ransomware attacks come directly to the village every month. So we're under constant barrage of, you know, attempted theft of data and or and trying to create, you know, take funding and get into our system. So the cybersecurity is taken on a whole other element now,
Another level. Yeah.
another level than what we used to traditionally. In the last 2 years alone, it's been a huge difference. So, all right. And then the equipment and machinery here that we're saving, Angela, did you have a note, or Gabby?
That was because, let me just look at my file, but we had equipment, computer updates. Let me just check.
Angela, do you know off the top of your head? No. What do you got?
Oh, I think you move it, Yossi.
Where did I move it?
Move to the account municipal center impact fee.
Oh, okay. So yes, thank you for reminding me. Okay, so we one of the things that you may not have caught, but I did go through with you all when you had the individual meetings with me, how the impact fees that used to hit our revenues are now must be accounted for separately. So we have a new fund that's just called Impact Fee Fund, and the expenditures of how those funds must be used are very specific. So like hardware for equipment can be paid for out of municipal impact fees. So in order to bring down the general fund costs, the expenditures for our annual replacement of computers is now, or at least for this year, hit the impact fee, the municipal impact fee fund. Makes sense? And that way, that's how we got this number down. Thank you, Gabby. I couldn't remember what we did. Okay, so total on the IT went up again. Marie, do you have that number and the percentage on that one? I think she stepped away.
I'm here. I had gone, I was on the, let me just, okay. IT has gone up 66,425 or 15%.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on IT? We're going to go back to police. Thank you, Gabby.
I have one thing to do, and I just want to bring it so that you know, we through the CARE Act, we're getting a lot of laptops to help with telework. Those were not considered before when we did this budget. So even though we're gonna pay for it right now, that those additional equipment are gonna incur in increase for future budgets in maintenance for all the software application. So just keep in mind that there again, it's the repairs and maintenance line item that it's gonna go up, and it's because of we're adding all this additional equipment that starting this year we need to support. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Gabby. You can go off the call.
Thank you.
All right. Is Jason on the call now? Yep, I see him here. Okay.
I'm here.
Hi, DC. Okay. All right. So just going back to revenues. So we talked about the police grant, the COVID grant, the MOU for school board. Have you heard anything about the school board doing away with needing our school resource officers? Has that been?
For this school year, no, we're still needed. What the school board right now has committed to is all middle schools and high schools, but not yet elementary schools.
Okay.
But I do want to mention they changed the structure of the MOU because they realized when school shut down in March last year, they still paid us for the rest of the year when our school officer wasn't there. So they amended the MOU for this year to be actual time in the school. So since school has not started and does not anticipate to start till October at the earliest, and maybe not even then, they're only going to pay for the actual time that our officers in the school. So we can basically count the whole month of September out, and we'll see what happens in October.
Right. Well, from a budgeting perspective, what we basically budgeted with this amount is half a year only. Okay.
Yeah. So that
This represents the cost of just one officer, even though we have two.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
that's
Yossi, can I ask a question on that?
sure.
So, first of all, probably, I guess the attorney would ask it. In the state mandate, the state mandated that they have a security police officer in each school, that the boards provide that. We were providing two of the schools, 2 out of the 4 schools, a certain dollar amount. I don't know how much it is now, this year projected. But now they want to come back and say that we only charge them for our actual officer time, which is legitimate. I mean, you only collect what you're there for. But are we still paying for officers to cover their schools?
Yes, we have 2 officers that are assigned as from our sworn officer base to be school resource officers when they are in session. If the
So
school-
when's the state mandate take place, and when's that supposed to take in effect? They've got 20 years to comply with that state mandate, or never?
The
It
state
really means
mandate-
nothing.
The state mandate's already in effect, and the way they're complying is by contracting out with the municipalities to have an officer in the school. If we told them Pinecrest isn't going to give you an officer, they'd have to find another way to do it. But we've agreed to do it, and they've agreed to give us some money towards it.
Well, now they want to take, but you see what I'm saying? I'm saying they're trying to get us in every way they can, which is legitimate. We only hit, but now we're still providing when they were mandated by the state. I mean, they have their own board, they have their own budget, they have their own money. They
But,
got money.
but let's contextualize it from Pinecrest's side and not the school board side. So Pinecrest started providing school resource officers to the public schools in Pinecrest back when we incorporated 25 years ago. So this was something that we were doing in order to supplement the policing, the community policing that was going on at our public schools all along. In a very strange way, this MOU in which the school board reimburses us partially for that time is, you could argue, is a windfall. We were already doing it. We simply wrote an MOU which entitled us to a certain level of reimbursement. Now it's the status quo. And so if they want to move to an MOU in which actual time spent is the reimbursement standard, you can say, well, the revenue is going down, but it's only a decrease if you look at it from a very short window. If you look at it from a historical window of the services that we've been proffering to the public schools, it's a wash. We've been providing.
Well, and so I would say that historically, you're right. When the state didn't mandate that, the school boards who want to be in charge, listen, they fight to be in charge. They want to collect their millage, which is the biggest out of everybody's. They want to have their own police. They want to have their own rules. They want to build what types of schools they want to build. Cities should have no input. We went through this with the sign at Palmetto Elementary, Pinecrest Elementary, but now so maybe this council needs to look at, since they have a mandate from the state saying you'll provide your security, is it Pinecrest is now, are we still going to provide their security? I guess the council has to ask themselves that. Yeah, in the future, they didn't provide any security. They didn't have to. They had no regulation. They had no mandate to do it. Now they've got a mandate from the state saying you will provide it. You charge people your millage. You have your school police. You provide the security. Yeah, maybe it's time we take back our $100,000 and say, you know what? You provide it. You're getting paid. We all pay in our pockets out of our homeowner tax money to provide that service. And they got money from the state, I'm sure. I don't know how much, but I'm sure they got federal and state monies to hire security. I'm sure.
Doug, it's an unfunded mandate, just so that you're clear. It's a mandate that doesn't come with sufficient funds from the state. And they're not on, the funds that are committed are not ongoing commitments. They can be zeroed out at any time. So just so you understand, it is an unfunded commitment. Now, they did put huge amounts of money into the guardianship program so that the schools can pay to give their janitors firearms and have them wander around school. But intelligently, most of those funds are unused at the state level because most of the school boards understand that that's not an appropriate use of their staff. So what you have is fundamentally, in broad terms, an unfunded mandate here. I do agree.
Well,
with
we're cutting our own.
What I'm saying to you is I agree with you that it's unsustainable. And I think most of the municipalities that have entered into these agreements in order to support the school board recognize that this can't go on forever.
No, and as I originally mentioned, it's my understanding that their goal was to complete the hiring process so that they are at every school themselves. And I thought, they would be at that place this school year, but maybe with COVID and everything else that's going on, they're not.
We ourselves cut our, we were running into so much overtime last year's budget that Yossi took away, the council gave her permission to take away the 5-officer mandate because we were running into so much overtime and people couldn't get time off. People couldn't take vacation. There was forced overtime. We couldn't hire anybody. But yet now, still years after, I get it's unfunded, but the school board is their own board. They need to figure out how to fund it. So we ourselves cut back from having an officer in each zone, 5 zones, every shift, every day, mandated by the council. Now we've taken that away. There is no mandate.
Well, just to be clear, Doug, what we did was we gave the flexibility on the midnight shift if we were down 1 and we
that's just factually untrue. There is no more mandate. There is no more 5-officer mandate.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
The latitude we were given was that in an emergency situation, in a staffing shortage situation at the last minute, where we used to have to mandate people to come in and fill those gaps, we now have the operational authority to say we can run this shift with 4 instead of 5 because this shift is slow. It is not the norm. And
See, that's just Major Cohen or Chief Cohen. That's just factually untrue. This council did not tell Yossi you could go to 4 or 5. This council said, go read the minutes, that you can do whatever you want. It's your profession. You decide how you need to run it.
Right.
That
and
is
what he's saying, Doug,
but I'm just, it really upsets me that
Mr.
we're
Mayor,
sitting here talking about
if we're going to have
this
Councilmember
council
Kraft
sat
screaming
here.
over all of us, can
All
we
right, well,
at least have
somebody
him
then
on camera so that we can have a virtual conversation rather than a voice screaming at us over Zoom?
Can you put yourself on camera, Doug?
Oh, I don't even know if my thing. I don't even know how to do.
What
that.
are we talking about here?
If I could just interject, there's no difference.
No, it just goes.
What Doug said.
It's very simple. It's not.
I'm going to reiterate, Mr. Mayor, I don't think that this form of conversation, given the limitations of technology, is going to work. We need to do something here so that we can have a conversation where people aren't screaming over other people.
Okay, well, everybody can't scream at everybody. You want him on camera or you want him to stop screaming?
Well, I think we should figure out.
Well, screaming over people, I had the floor and everybody else started talking.
I think we need to figure out a way where we can take turns, and I think certainly people should be on screen.
I see a hand up.
Yeah. Manager, go ahead.
Okay, what Deputy Chief Cohen said is not in conflict with what Councilmember Kraft said. What Deputy Chief Cohen was expressing is how we implement council's direction. Okay, so Councilmember Kraft is correct in what he said as far as what council's direction was, but Deputy Chief was explaining how we actually implement the direction. Okay, so there's no one here is lying and no one is giving misinformation. They're both accurate. So what Deputy Chief was explaining is that council's position to do away with the 5-person minimum now allows the flexibility that in some cases when there's an emergency, staff, depending on calls for services and what's happening on that particular day, it potentially could be on a Saturday or Sunday when we don't have a lot of calls for services. All these little things are taken into consideration before a person is called in to come in and cover a shift. If necessary, because calls level for service are high or up or something's going on that's different, we would require the 5-person minimum and then people would be called in.
Okay, Hand up, Jim.
Yeah, I just have a question. Why are we debating this now? When was this? 2 years, 3 years ago? We gave the police the flexibility to do what is best in their professional judgment. So what are we talking about this now for? Yeah.
What's the issue?
That's what I'm asking.
not talking about the police issue. I'm not bringing up to change the police issue. I brought up, they were talking about the school resource officer.
That's a different issue. Okay.
And that's all I talked about. Now I got interrupted and everybody wanted to say their 2 cents, which is fine. I don't care. But if nobody wants to discuss it, I'm fine. I just said, we have been supplying school resource officers. The state was mandated, unfunded or funded. I don't know what the school board does. I don't go to their meetings. I don't get involved in their budgets or why they're not funding their police, which way they're mandated to do. Maybe they should raise taxes. I mean, so I don't know, but I'm just saying we provide it. And you're right, we have been providing it forever. I lived here forever. I know we've been providing school resource officers forever. So I just, what point do we say, well, the school board has to do this?
All right, anybody?
That's all. And if the council doesn't want to talk about it or do anything about it, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Jeez, trust me. It doesn't
Okay, anybody else?
to me, but Jim, I'm not bringing up, and I just brought up the fact that last year, because of money and people couldn't get time off, we changed the mandate with the police. And I agree. You know, the chief, he runs the department. He needs to do it how he thinks is right.
Okay, anybody else want to follow up on that?
I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see your hand. I don't even see you. All right, next on the, all right, go ahead, Anna.
Oh, so I was going to say, this is something we discuss every year. It needs to be stated quite clearly that whenever school resource officers aren't being school resource officers, they're being patrol officers. That's also been true since the beginning of Pinecrest, which means when schools are out of session, summer, vacations, whatever, now they're simply folded into our regular patrol resource. So there's no net harm to the village. But certainly if we see any change on the school board side in terms of how they are funding and controlling their own mandate to provide police officers, then we have the opportunity to suspend our school resource program if that's what we choose to do. But it doesn't look like in this particular year that's going to happen. And in the meantime, the financial burden is somewhat softened by the fact that we have a memorandum of understanding.
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
I have a quick question. Is that a typo where it says MOE school board?
Yeah, it should be
MOU.
MOU, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, private detail, we dropped significantly. You'll see it's only at 5,000, and that's basically because really we don't have a lot going on that would require private detail where we get reimbursed just in a general sense. There's not a lot of community festivals and things like that that are happening, which is typically what hits and gives us increased revenue on that particular line item. Judgments, fines, and fines is really tied to our ticket activity. We've seen that over, obviously during the pandemic, our officers are not out issuing citations at the same level than they traditionally would. So we're gonna see a decrease in that revenue source just in a general sense. And then the final part is the traffic light cameras. We are seeing less traffic on the roads because of the pandemic. And so these numbers are basically reflective of that we're anticipating a decrease in that revenue source. But if you look at our 12-month estimates, it was already, we're anticipating a little higher than what we're budgeting for next year. And this 12-month estimate is the projection for this, for the full year, which is 6 months worth of pandemic impact. Okay. And then personal services, what you're seeing here are the effects of the increases already built in. We've also, one of the things that we didn't do, and this is across all the employees village-wide, was add another $100,000, and that's on the wish list, another $100 per employee for health insurance costs. So we'll go over the wish list that didn't make Pinecrest with those numbers and what that impact would be if we wanted to add that into the budget. Okay, so and then finally on operating expenditures, I'm sorry because I'm moving around some of the people's faces so that I can see what we're doing. What are the anything of significance? Oh, here the rental and lease. This number here dropped because we don't have a task force officer right now that's been assigned, and that rental and lease was the vehicle for that officer. So we had some savings there. Let me see what else. Operating supplies, gasoline. We saw some savings just because cost of gas is down, so we were able to show some savings there. And that's basically the gist of it. Obviously, no training, no travel and per diem, that's all been taken out as well. So that's where that came from. Machinery and equipment, the big savings there is tied to the license plate reader program. So in the current year, we had the expenditure of building the first phase of the license plate reader program, which is $303,000 or $304,000. So that's not happening next year.
Wait a second, Yossi, wait a second, stop for a second, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So we ought to talk about the continuing to expand the license plate reading program. That's a popular item in the village. People like it when they understand it. They like it. It's very good to, it helps us keep the place safe, helps law enforcement both prevent and solve crime. So I think that's something at some point in our discussions, we ought to consider.
I have the number for that, and the wish list didn't make budget. So when we get to that wish list stuff, that'll come up in discussion. Well, Jason, did you have something? I know you sent me the big reduction is that we're not buying cars. Is that what the big reduction?
Yeah. So the big capital reduction is that we're actually going to skip a year of buying new police cars because by looking at our fleet, that the age of our fleet is relatively young and they're still in relatively good shape, that we can go a year without buying the normal between 4 and 6 cars and not impact operations at all.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so overall, Marie, can you give us the overall numbers for the police department? What was the savings and the percentage?
The drop is 400,120, and that's 3.9%.
Okay, any questions on PD? Okay, thanks, Jason, you're good to go. Thank you. Okay, building and planning department. Okay, building and planning. So building and planning, a lot of stuff happening. This current year, we have done, and we're wrapping up a study of all the fees for permit, for building, planning, and public works. The revised fee schedule, which would look at simplifying how we fee development and all that stuff, will be presented to council in September. Right now, it looks like it'll likely happen at the second meeting in September. We're gonna try for the first, but we're still wrapping up that study. So the numbers that are submitted from a revenue perspective, that are tied to building and planning is an anticipation of the new fee structures as well being looked at by council and approved. But we, as I mentioned during the revenue section, we are anticipating a decrease in permit activity, even though it's starting to pick up again. Guido, if Leo is on the call, go ahead and bring him into the call in case the council has any questions on the permit side of things. And Guido and Leo can also speak to the issue of the proposed inspectors that we're adding from a part-time perspective and what's happening with all of those things. Overall, for the existing personnel, the personal services already includes the 5% and all the other fringe benefit changes that we talked about. Then we get into operating expenditures. So the largest increase in operating expenditure is hitting the other contractual services account, which is where we would be hitting if we were to hire, well, not hire, if we would use a third-party provider for the building position, the building inspector or plans review position that we are anticipating we're going to be needing because of the amount of, I mentioned earlier in our presentation, the amount of backlog that we have in that department from a plans review perspective. And also for inspections, we're generating a large amount of inspections a day. Leo, are you on the car? Can you take yourself off mute if you're on mute? A third-party provider for the building position, the building inspector or plans review position that we are anticipating we're going to.
He has the streaming video on the background. He has to turn that off.
Presentation, the amount of.
Oh, I thought Yossi was a ventriloquist. Her lips weren't moving.
That's funny. And also for inspections, we're generating.
You have to turn off the. There you go.
Inspections a day. Leo, are you on the car? Can you take yourself off mute if you're on mute?
Let's see. I think I'm on mute now.
No, you're talking.
Okay. Okay.
For the building position, the building. Leo, you need to take off. You're listening to two different things. So just talk into the phone. I guess you're calling us from the phone, and then turn the other thing off completely so that we don't hear there's like a delay in the signal. And also for inspection, we're generating.
You have to turn off the.
Okay, is that working?
Are you on the car?
No.
No, it's not working. We can still hear the other stuff.
I think I'm on mute now.
No, you're talking. Yeah, this isn't gonna work. Go ahead and take them off. I'll have to do it by myself. Guido, take them off line. Yes, you're calling us from the phone, and then turn the other thing off completely so that we don't hear there's like a delay. Okay, we're taking him off. Sorry, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties, the challenges of virtual meetings. Okay. What he would have said, and he can hopefully text me information, is that we currently have a backlog of plans review. We're looking at like something between 70 and 80 plans in queue at any given time to do building plan review. So we're looking to add personnel to help bring us to get that to a more manageable level of service. And in addition to that, what we've been doing traditionally is using a third-party provider for any time that we need augmented inspection services. And we have been able to find people who are willing to take on the position on a part-time capacity. So they're only used when necessary. So those are the two additional part-time positions that I was recommending we create in the budget, and which currently are paid for through contractual services. So that's going to just shift into in-house personnel. It depends. I mean, if we keep these people on board and they stay with us for a long period of time, great. If not, then we revert back to having to use these third-party contractors to augment our staff, in-house staff. Travel and per diem was completely taken off. Any of the future budgets, communications, and freight services. This went up. Angela, can you see why this went up to 25.8? What's hitting this? Is it a new, something different that's happening here?
That was the postage. We had issues with the postage machine, and that's why the general government went down a little bit on postage also, because building department pays for their own and it wasn't being allocated correctly. So now it is.
Okay, so it went down on the general government side, but then it came in
Right.
here because the postage is being used by this department and this department is supposed to pay for itself. Okay,
Right.
that was just an adjustment overall in the budget. Repair, maintenance, other, what's hitting that account that just saw a little bump up? And
I was
then,
actually texting Gabby now because it's about the Meta Defender software that scans files and attachments for internal and external customers.
okay,
This is part of the cybersecurity.
that we've
and
added to this, it's directly tied to their being able to receive plans and documents electronically and be able to review those before they open them up, so that we don't get a virus into our computer system or network. And then dues and training, obviously, any conference dues that are built into this last line item were taken out. The equipment and machinery, we're purchasing, what is this? Equipment and machinery is computers,
Computer replacement.
computer replacement. So it's part of our computer replacement program that we have automatically set up to replace a certain amount of computers every so often. So in general, this department saw an increase of,
Almost there, 282,135 or 11.8%.
okay. Are there any questions with regard to this particular department? I know that, I don't know if Councilmember Kraft wants to speak, but I know that he can attest to some of the issues with the level of service issues that we're having in the turnaround of plans and stuff. Okay,
No, I think Yossi, you guys are on it.
okay. Any questions from anyone? Concerns? Okay. Public Works. Okay. We are adding a full-time building inspector, plan examiner to provide quicker turnaround and building plans submitted as reworks or revisions. And this, oh, sorry, back on building and planning, reworks or revisions. This will allow us to replace a current use of consultant engineering fee to do overflow inspections. Okay, so what we're going to be doing as part of the fee schedule changes when they get submitted to you is we're going to be we're going to also set up a new revenue stream that provides, if somebody wants to submit for rework or revisions and the plans review that goes with that be done through an expedited process. So people would be paying a premium. That additional revenue source will also help offset the cost of that full-time position for the building and planning department, the plans reviewer and inspector.
And so basically what you're explaining to me is that there have been several expenses associated with the building and planning department that we haven't been capturing on the revenue side.
Correct.
We're supposed to be operating a building and planning department, which is revenue neutral. It generates enough money to pay for the services it provides, but we've been subsidizing it over the last few years.
Correct. So this was the first time that we actually did this full-blown study to look and make sure that we're charging what we should be charging, and we were subsidizing them. The village was subsidizing them in terms of even overhead in some cases. Just not all the costs were being captured. The study, when you see it, is going to be eye-opening because you'll see everything that now it's like a really great study, but it's taken a year. So to get all that and put together, it's extensive. So you'll be seeing that next month. But it's in support of the numbers that are already built into this budget. Okay. Okay. Public Works. Okay, Public Works. In general, Public Works is seeing a decrease overall. You'll see the revenue is up here. We've already talked about the revenue stuff. The personal services in a general sense for Public Works has gone down, even though they are getting the increases, the 5% increases built in. But namely, they've gone down for two reasons. We've had the retirement of Gary Krakenberger, who was with us for 25 years, I want to say, or 24 years, as our arborist.
Who's taken his place?
So we have a new gentleman named Richard Carr, Carr. He's one of our laborers who's now been promoted to that position. He's been getting trained by Gary for the last year for that position, and he obtained his certification as an arborist. So he's taking over that. So he's in the midst of learning the ropes as we speak. And then we also had the replacement of Mark Spagnoli with David Mendez, which occurred this year. And that allowed us to combine basically two positions, at least in the short term. I don't know if this is going to be a long-term solution, but David was working with the city before getting hired by me as a public works director. He was our consulting stormwater engineer. So because he has that talent, we were able to combine those two functions into one. And we're trying that out to see if from a service provision standpoint, we can still provide good service by combining those two positions. And if we start seeing too much, I guess, lag on the review of these things, we may have to revisit bringing a third-party contractor back in. But for now, especially for next year, where we're trying to find savings, we're leaving it alone, where he's doing, wearing two hats as department head and also taking over the stormwater plan review process. So thank you, David, for saving us some money. So we found some savings in the personal services because of that. And likewise in professional services, we were able to save some money on professional services. Angela, where are we saving this? What's coming here?
We have that, there was a completion of a one-time project, but I don't know which one in specific.
Okay, so there was just one-time project that now it's not a ongoing expenditure. So it was a one-time expenditure in the current year's budget, not in next year's budget. Okay. And then other than that, just minimal tweaks, repair and maintenance vehicles. We're seeing a huge improvement on here because we switched to a new system where we are now partnering with Enterprise Fleet car rental service, where they provide us a new vehicle to replace our vehicles every 6 months. And so because we're constantly switching out our vehicles to new, we have less repair and maintenance costs tied to our vehicles. So that was an innovative program that's actually gonna save the village some money that we're testing out. We tested it out with Public Works, and now we're gonna be doing it as well with Parks and Recreation because it was successful in Public Works. Repairs and maintenance other was hitting that account, Angela, that we saw a little bit of an increase.
Maintenance costs, obviously, and then addition of a yearly AutoCAD fees.
Oh, okay. So AutoCAD is a software that they use for creating plans and reviewing plans, which now we're doing in-house. So before, that used to be charged through the third-party contractor that we no longer are using. Okay, and then no training, obviously, travel and per diems cut, and any conference fees has been cut. So overall, this department saw a decrease. Can you repeat the decrease again?
161,700 or 17.4%.
Okay, any questions with regards to Public Works? Okay, Parks and Rec. Okay, Parks and Rec, this particular one is exclusive of the community center because we have a separate department for community center. So everything that's in here is strictly what happens at our other parks, not including community center. So in overall, this department, the program revenues that's attributed to Parks and Recreation will see a decrease overall. But you will see that we still feel comfortable that programming will generate a good amount of revenue. We are reinventing ourselves and our programming selection to things that would be more virtual in nature. And one of the things that we've seen a lot of success in, which we will be repeating throughout the year next year, are the programs that are school related programs that we did see from a summer camp perspective. We had the summer camps were really successful. Even in the day of COVID, we were really good at implementing all the safety protocols. And so we're going to parlay that and move forward with programs that are going to be school centric, after school and during school type virtual and in-person programming. So we're anticipating, just a little less than, I want to say, or a little bit, what is it? A shortfall of about $125,000 on the revenue side, but still pretty good. The overall personal services already includes all those other, the 5%, et cetera. And then we get into operating expenditures. So the largest new expenditure that's included in the operating expenditures is under professional services. This is a one-time expenditure that is being recommended to create a village-wide master plan for parks and recreation for all our parks. We've talked about this in the strategic plan for years, and we've just never gotten around to doing it. But also in anticipation of our getting accredited, we're currently in the process of getting accreditation for this department. That one of the requirements is that we have a master plan, a village-wide master plan. So that's the $90,000 one-time cost that would allow us to go forward with the master plan project.
Can you explain for the benefit of the public what the point of a master plan is beyond accreditation?
Sure.
Why bother to do a master plan?
So we look at master plan, same way that we did the transportation master plan and the stormwater master plan. You look at current levels of service. It takes a holistic view of everything that is occurring village-wide from a facility perspective and a service level perspective. It looks at what standards are, best practice standards we should be aspiring to and how we measure up to those standards. It takes a look at each of our facilities individually. It combines all the master plans that we've already done into one program and also tries to come up with a prioritization of how to go forward from a priority perspective. What are things that we should be going after? For example, we've looked and have discussed for many years the idea of trying to seek properties for water access and or neighborhood pocket parks. And it starts to look at where we should be looking for those amenities and putting dollar signs and hopefully, long-term goals that would tackle some of the, lack of facilities we might have, where we may have holes, where we may want to add amenities to the village.
To circle back around to the bond conversation that we were having earlier, a master plan like this one becomes the guiding document, which years down the road will result in a bond issuance in order to meet the objectives that were begun in the master plan, right?
Correct.
And it's not a 1 year or one fiscal year or one calendar year project. This is a master plan which has a long-term goal, begins to prioritize projects, begins to roundly guesstimate what sort of capital infrastructure and what sort of investment will be needed. And then we slowly, over multiple budget years, work towards realizing the vision that was established in the master plan.
Correct. Yeah, and typically master plans inform 5 to 10 years worth of projects. They typically get updated every 5 years. It's been interesting that over the 25-year history of Pinecrest, we've never actually done a comprehensive Parks and Recreation master plan. We've typically just done it as part of the comp plan process, but not something that's more, deep dive into what's happening. So, like I said, we've done a little bit of, some of this will be to capture things we've already done from a strategic planning perspective. So it'll just put it all into one document and give a clearer direction of where we're heading when it comes to
and conceivably highlight structural deficiencies that we have in this area.
Correct.
Many people are unaware that there are standards in the state of Florida for how much park green space is appropriate, for example, based on your square mileage, based on your population, based on where your population lives in terms of distance from parks facilities. There are standards for best practices, and this will give us an opportunity to determine whether we're meeting all those standards or whether we're deficient in any of them.
Right. Yeah, and it also looks at, for example, one of the wish list items that didn't make the budget, but was something that we were toying with was, refinishing, the basketball courts at the schools, because we look at not just our facilities, but also facilities that we have use of that also can potentially augment our level of service, because we currently use school fields and program in school fields to augment our facilities that are owned by the village. So all these little things would be all wrapped up into that one master plan. It would give a more holistic view of what's happening with Parks and Recreation in the village. Okay, other contractual services. These are where we hit instructors for our programs, and in the event that our programs, if we can't sell tickets to the programs, then we don't have the expenditure. So the commensurate revenue and expenditure, these are basically pass-throughs. We either get the revenue and then have the expenditures, or we don't. So when we push out these programs, you know, we'll be monitoring that and obviously canceling things that are not getting any traction. So we
This one removes the sod replacement depending on the bond.
I'm sorry?
This contractual includes the decreases the sod replacement.
Oh, the sod replacement. Okay.
For Flagler Grove.
Flagler Grove, right. So if we were not to move forward with the bond issuance that would move forward the Flagler Grove project, then we would have to increase this line item by, I think it's $36,000 we spend every year for sod replacement at Flagler Grove Park. Okay. Travel and per diem was taken out. Maintenance other, anything else that's missing here? Operating supplies other, we had some savings here because we're not doing a lot of the events, the community events that typically would fall under Parks and Recreation. So we had some savings there. Resale is down because the concession is down. We don't have as much, you know, people just milling around and using our facilities where they would be buying stuff that we're selling in the concessions. Okay, so overall, this department
Increase
go ahead.
27,645 or 2%.
2%. So we absorbed the 5% increase in the salary increase with savings on the operating side of it. Community center. Any questions, by the way, on Parks and Rec? Are we good with that?
Go for it.
Okay. And if you haven't noticed, we started doing programs like exercise, everything outdoors. We're just trying to reinvent ourselves from a program perspective. Okay, community center. Okay. Community center. Again, here we're seeing the picture from the revenue perspective where we're anticipating is going to be generated as opposed to this current year for next year. Salaries here, $10,000 roughly increase overall, but does include the 5% increase. And then we had some savings, again, just dropping costs because we're not doing as much programming. So we don't have the expenditures on the expenditure side of things if we're not doing the programming on the other side. A lot of the programs too that are still ongoing have shifted to virtual, like the ballet, stuff like that, the Sharp Minds, which were some of our big revenue producers. Those are still happening and they're just happening virtually. So we still have all those revenues that are going to be coming in. The one area that's being affected obviously is the gym membership and the gym usage. So anytime we've closed a gym, that's had a negative effect on that particular revenue source. We've also stopped charging Elia the rental for their food service just because they're not making enough to really be able to pay the rent. So we're just absorbing that loss.
Josie, I have a question about
Sure.
Ilya. How are they doing? I mean, are they serving people outside or inside?
They're serving outside. Everything is, but you know, not nearly, they don't get the traffic because we don't have as many people in the facility that was feeding their business model. So for now, they do a lot of like takeout delivery kind of stuff. And so we're just not pressuring them to pay the rent. We just understand, you know, we're more interested in them just staying as a business existing so that when things ramp up again, we can still have them in the building. So, okay. Let me see anything else that catches anybody's, the repairs and maintenance. It has to do with the savings with the vehicles by switching over to that, the enterprise fleet model where they replace the vehicles often. So overall, we saw a decrease in the community center of
36,850 or 2.7%.
2.7. Okay. All right. Pinecrest Gardens. Oh, by the way, we are going to be doing, just wanted to mention, the community center / Parks and Recreation Department will be doing a Halloween event. So we are reinventing our community events. Typically, if you recall, they did like Fit Kids Day and stuff like that. We've done away with stuff that doesn't allow for social distancing, but we're reinventing the Track or Treat event into Trunk or Treat. And that event will be a drive-through trunk or treat where people pop their trunks and we throw in the candy there, and they have different stops. We're gonna combine the zombie run, which we did last year, which was really successful, into this drive-through experience. So we'll have volunteer zombies. Everybody's gonna be socially distancing. So you'll have the cars coming through Pinecrest Gardens, and then we'll just have like an apocalyptic, zombie apocalypse type theme, where we all get to, some of the council members, and you should do it if you didn't do it last year. It was so much fun, right, Katie? and Anna, we all got dressed up as zombies, and so we're gonna scare the people in the cars, but it'll all be COVID centric in mind.
Do you have a date yet for that?
It's gonna be October 30th, so the day before Halloween. That will be happening, so that'll be fun. And then we're looking at doing drive-through, like drive-through theater. We tried to work with the school board to do it at the parking lot by the school, by the high school. That didn't work. They had too many restrictions. So now we're trying to work with Macy's property to see if we can pull something off there. Obviously, if we can't get the logistics done, then we won't have the expenditures that would be spent to go forward with those two events.
And we can't do it behind the community center?
No, because there's too many trees, and for this to work, you almost need a place where you could sit in a car and watch a movie from far away and not have a lot of obstruction. And so, you mean in the Village Green?
Yeah, where the track is and where they play soccer.
I try not to do too many things on that because I don't like to create, I like to move their events so that particular property doesn't get all the impact. Does that make sense? So we're trying to find alternatives. Obviously, we could look at that if we can't work something out with Macy's and their property. But the preference would be not to use that particular garden, Village Green. Okay. Plus, if we could find a good large piece of property, parking wise, we can fit more cars in some of these other parking spaces that even on that field. Also, parks must close at 8 p.m. because of executive order. This is what Rob just said. Okay, thanks, Rob, for the heads up on that. Okay, any other question on the community center stuff?
Nope.
Okay.
Keep moving.
Pinecrest Gardens. Pinecrest Gardens. Okay, Pinecrest Gardens. Let me look at it. Okay. Pinecrest Gardens, we have obviously, we're going to see a decrease in revenues just because we're not renting for parties right now. There's a lot of things happening because of the pandemic that are not going to be able to happen until this is over. We are going to see increases in grants, and we're always obviously applying for more grants wherever we can. So from personal services, 5% is across the board to all of the employees. And then operating expenditures, what's built into this is the reimagining of our jazz series. So this is out of the box thinking. This takes our jazz series and creates a pay-per-view production of each of those concerts. We have 8 concerts that were anticipated and contracted for this coming year, because obviously you do this way in advance because you have to hold on to these artists. So rather than canceling the entire season, what we're going to attempt to do, and we're just rolling out the program now, is to sell tickets to a pay-per-view where people can watch the concerts online from the comfort of their homes. Now the sale, so in order to make this revenue neutral. In other words, where we're not spending more, we have to sell about 1,000 tickets. Anything above that is profit.
How much do you sell out?
We normally sell 500 tickets for these concerts when they're in person, because we have 530 seats and most of our concerts are sold out. We're selling the tickets at $15 a concert. And if you buy all 8, it's $100. So for $100, you can watch 8 concerts. And these concerts include people like John Cicada, you know, big names. They're not little names that we had already. Grace Kelly, people that we already had in line. Now the
Pinecrest Gardens and play in the bowl, and we will videotape it.
Right. We're hiring a production company, kind of like you would produce a video, you know, like a commercial, you know. The production with cameras is 5 cameras. They come in and they'll do a live concert, like a pay-per-view, full-blown, you know, high quality product that people can, you know, that will be streamed online, and people who buy tickets will be able to see this concert, one-time concert. It's not something that then gets left for people to watch over and over again on YouTube. It's either you see it live or you don't see it, right? But then because it's all virtual, we can actually expand our audience to a national audience. So we're looking to do through social media, you know, advertising push in areas like New Orleans, where people love jazz, or, you know, Chicago, places we know that already have built-in jazz lovers, in the hopes that we'll be able to sell 1,000 tickets instead of 500. We think this is gonna go really crazy, and that people will want to do things, because people are looking to do anything from the safety of their home right now, something different. And really, you can't beat the price. You get to see, you know, 8 concerts for $100 from the comfort of your house. And it's going to be a beautiful production. And if we can make it happen, we're going to go forward. We're going to, you know, we're starting with John Cicada's, his concert is October 17th, I believe. And so we've already started pushing the commercials, you know, on social media. You're going to start seeing it. We hired the same PR company that did the stuff for the trolls, and that got us, you know, traction with Cortada projects for our Bazo. They're pushing, so they're you know, we're likely gonna get, as we get closer to the date, we're gonna hopefully get some national coverage, media coverage, because we're also partnering with World Kitchen, so that half of the proceeds will go to World Kitchen.
What's World Kitchen?
World Kitchen is it's a worldwide nonprofit that's headed up by Chef Jose Andres. Yeah, and they go to areas worldwide, not just in the United States, but like in the United States, they do Feeding America. So it's a COVID relief concert. So the whole thing is being marketed as a COVID relief concert. So the proceeds, so any monies we make off of this will be split with the fundraising capacity of feeding people that are being affected by the pandemic. So it has a pandemic component to it, in the hopes that that'll help also generate sales. So this is completely new territory for us, but we're committed, and we're working really closely with the folks. It's World Central Kitchen. Thank you, Michelle.
I think it's Josie, I think it's a great idea to do this, because I'm not a jazz fan, but I know people that are. And it's, if we advertise in the major cities, New York, as you just said, New York, Chicago, and all that, it's good advertisement as well for the Benyon Bowl.
Right, like World Central Kitchen, for example, right now they're in the California feeding people in need because of the fires. And so they help, they have a huge following worldwide as an organization. They're gonna help amplify also these concerts to their followers. And then every artist, like John Cicada, for example, has over 100,000 fans. So we have access to those 100,000 fans. I mean, if we cannot sell 1,000 tickets, I don't know what to tell you, but I think we can do this, and this might, if it takes off, I believe that we're gonna have something that even in the future, post-COVID, we may want to produce the concert. And because if it could generate revenue, you know, it doesn't cost a lot to have the cameras there to do a production while you're doing a live performance. You know, you would still have the live audiences, but you would then have the benefit of also selling tickets nationally or even globally for that matter. So I don't know, it's an experiment. Alana and I had brainstormed how we can save the music and not have to go completely dark in the Banyan Bowl, because obviously, as you all know, that jazz series, we were building on the successes of the prior years, and we were really doing such a great job that we didn't want to lose a whole year of the Banyan Bowl being dark. So that's where we're going with on that one.
I think it's a great example of thinking outside the box. And I do have a question.
Sure.
Is anything in the budget for when we have other productions there, whether it's Shakespeare or anything? You know, no. You know what I was about to say, having microphones so that they're attached so people can be heard. Every time I've gone to a Shakespeare thing, while they're great, it would be much better if they had the microphone attached to their belt with a, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. No, we don't have that built into this year's budget, but I'm sure Alana is taking copious notes as you were talking of anything.
Because it's really missing when you can't hear people talking, and it's just, it's something that we really should be thinking about for the future.
Right. And then finally, the only other community festival that we're going to be having next year, we've canceled, you know, the art festival. We're the only other thing we're allowing or that we're proposing to continue are the Nights of Lights, which is the Christmas lights, because we obviously can social distance, it's outdoors and people can still walk and look at the lights. So we're still allowing for that to go forward. And hopefully by then the park won't have to close by 8 o'clock, which would then throw off everything we're trying to do here. We were anticipating we would still have to social distance, but that we would be able to have that open for longer periods of time. Usually the Nights of Lights closes like around 10 o'clock at night. If not, we can always ask for a special authorization from the county to allow that from the county mayor's office. Okay. Any other questions?
Nights of Lights. So if council decides to go forward with Pinecrest Gardens Upper Garden improvements, would that construction affect Nights of Light, assuming we could start before?
No, Nights of Lights is not in that area. We never have anything going on in the area of the Upper Garden project for Nights of Lights anyway. That whole area, which is, it's in like a different elevation, would be completely fenced off to the public. Construction would be happening from the back side of things through the service road in the back. And it would not have any impact whatsoever on Nights of Lights.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, that wraps that up. So overall, that department did see an increase of
A decrease of 100,775 or 4%.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on any of the departments?
Nope.
Okay, transfers to other funds. This is basically where we're going to be anticipating. As you can see, the big transfers are the amount that would go to the debt service fund. And this includes the roughly $1,000 to retire the bond early, would be shifting, coming out of general fund into the debt service fund. And then the $125,000 out of general fund to the capital fund for the small projects that Marie mentioned, the ones that are like $10,000 to $15,000 miscellaneous projects throughout the different parks.
Okay, so to reiterate, we are not taking cash out of our reserves to pay the bond off early.
Correct.
We are taking about 100,000 and change to pay for small capital improvements like the lighting at different parks facilities, correct?
Correct.
Got it.
Okay.
Madam, the finance director did want to correct a statement you made earlier about a penalty on paying off the bond earlier.
Okay, can she speak up? Is she on the call or no?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
There is a 1% prepayment penalty, so it's about $5,000.
Okay. So
Thank
it's
you.
not, I thought it was a savings of 3,000. It's not 30,000. I'm sorry.
It's a savings of 29,000.
Okay. Is that correct, Marie? The save, like the retiring it early saves on the interest, right?
Correct. It saves on the interest. I'd have to look at the number. Let me go and,
Can you give me like the total, like after penalties and everything, what this does? You know what I'm saying?
yes, let me,
Okay. You can interrupt that. I'm just gonna keep going while you're looking for that. Okay. All right. Do you all want to go? I think I kind of went quickly over the stormwater utility fund. Do you need to go through in detail, or are you comfortable with what I already went over with that? Okay.
Keep going.
I have the number. I'm sorry. It is, I think you guys the 16,000 is the interest and fees. And then if we have to pay 5,000, so it's about 11,000 savings.
11,000. Okay. I'm sorry. I misadvised Councilmember Kokomer. Okay.
But in the end, we save $11,000.
Right.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Let me look real quick for Angela, did you send me the wish list? Can you?
In the email I sent you, or I can send
This
it
morning?
again if you want.
Okay, hold on. Let me just look for it. Unread.
It's the one unfunded requests.
Hold on. Budget workshop, unfunded requests. Okay, let me share screen. Share screen. Okay, so these are the things that did not make the budget wish lists that people asked for, different departments asked for, and then we just took out or did not include in the budget. So just wanted to go through them quickly. Sunnyland Park, so the chair replacements, we have chairs and tables there, and our Parks and Recreation Director wanted to replace, and I said we can hold off another year without new chairs. We can keep using the old ones we have. Maintenance guys had wanted us to do a bucket truck, a new bucket truck, so I just said hold off on that. Evelyn Greer Park, same thing, chair replacements for that. We're gonna hold off on that because we currently have chairs already. They're not in great shape. Community center, soccer benches, the shade structure for the village green to put over the soccer benches is a $29,000 line item. Right now, we're not even out there really, and we can go another year without it. It's a want, not a need. Palmetto Middle School basketball court renovation. This was something that we had been asked to price out. The courts at the middle school are not in great shape. That's a $35,000 price tag to replace that. Security camera upgrade for the community center to include a people counter. My response was our receptionist there can count the old fashioned way, and we don't need to have a counter for right now. We can do with what we have. Red Road lighting, I had been asked to just price out what it would cost to do. Is this number correct, Angela? I don't know why this number seems low to me. I don't think
There's two different, and if David is listening, he can give the details on it. There's the one that if you scroll down that the mayor asked for, and that's extending the lights all the way down. And this is just exchanging the poles.
Oh, okay.
I think.
I see.
Projects.
Okay, so this 40,000 would be the cost of taking the existing poles along our linear park and replacing them with the poles that we used in the Kendall Drive project, so that it all has one look village-wide for street lights. Cyclomedia update. This was a wish list. Cyclomedia is a system that works like Google Maps, where they drive through with cars and all these fancy cameras, and they capture everything in the right of way. We did it for our tree inventory, which was one of the strategic plan objectives that council had. And the Public Works Director had pitched that we use that same technology to capture additional information that could be useful to do the layers for public works on what facilities we have.
Explain to me more about why we would do it and what we would use the information for.
So, for example, Cyclomedia would capture actual locations of all our drainage facilities, you know, that are in the right of way. Right now, we have it with old-fashioned way. This would be taking it to a technological ability that would then allow us to keep track of like maintenance efforts and everything all on CAD. We don't have that ability right now. Everything is kind of done manually. So this definitely is something we should do. I just, you know, again, if we could do without for another year, we didn't include
Yeah,
it.
I'm not questioning that, but I'm thinking, you know, I mean, we've had issues, for example, in the past where we've had bad information from the county on where the water plugs are, right? I mean,
Right.
we aren't even necessarily 100% sure of what facilities are sitting in the right of way. We don't know necessarily where every single pole is. I mean, we're counting all this stuff with pencil and paper.
Right. In particular, like they're texting me now, this 60,000 would have identified where we have all our drainage facilities in a, you know, through that technology. And that way for FEMA reimbursement perspectives, anything that would come in case of an issue in the future or any upgrades that we can go after mitigation grants to update those facilities, we would have all that technology available.
Okay, noted.
All that data available through that technology. The security camera upgrade, Angela, Rob says that it's not 36,000, it's $3,680. So big difference.
That's a big zero, yes.
That's a big zero.
Okay.
So you can fix that. Okay, restoring employee retirement contribution. That's what it would have cost us if we added the 3% to the general employees to bring them back up to a 13% contribution match from the village for pension. The freebie service we talked about already, so that's we're doing away with that, so ignore that. Building and planning department IT upgrades, transfers of servers to a cloud-based system and electronic plan review. One of the things we keep every year, we talk about doing the changing to allow electronic plan review, but with that comes a huge price tag. So again, I just didn't want to keep adding to our costs, and we can wait one more year to go live with that. The increase to employee insurance stipend, we had talked last year, 2 years ago, when we talked about reinstating the lost benefits, that for the following 2 years, we would add $100 per employee for the health insurance premium. We didn't add that second $100 in this year's budget. To do that, it would cost us $164,400. Stormwater master plan update. We're supposed to update it every 5 years. We're holding off. We still have plenty of projects that we have yet to complete in the initial 12 million that we identified as priority projects, so we can hold off on that for one more year. Palmetto Middle School athletic field renovation, to just resod it and get it back looking good. We've just, over the years, I think the last time we did this full athletic field was probably 15 years ago. So it just needs a little love and tenderness. So that would be 177,000. And then Red Road lighting, this big ticket line item was just looking at cost for if we wanted to add lighting along the whole linear park shared use path from Killian all the way down to Oak Cutler, what that price tag would be if we wanted to do something with lighting like what we have in our linear park that goes from Kendall Drive to Killian. Okay. And then one thing that isn't here is the shared use path. Let me see what I have it. Are there any questions on any of this stuff? Anything that you guys want to talk about? Or are you okay with what we've recommended, not including these things?
I'm okay with
Sounds
I'm
fine.
good.
Okay. The one thing I thought was in here that's not in here is the phase 2 of the license plate reader, which Vice Mayor had asked about. The phase 2 is $600,000. for that project. And then the other thing that's not in here is the, hold on, let me get off of share screen and let me just go through my emails. I had a price tag for, where is it? It's in my inbox. Nikki, I know you're listening to me. Can you send me an email on the linear, the shared use path costs for the Ludlam one and for Kendall Drive that we got price? If you can send it to me.
And Yossi, while we're waiting, then, so what's the long-term plan then to go to phase 2 for the license, the LPRs, if we're not going to do it this year?
It's really, I don't know the answer to that. I think, you know, what we did in prior years was the surplus we had from one, like the end of the year surplus that we were going to get, we decided to just flip it and approve it and just carry that amount over for that project. So, you know, that's one way to do it. Otherwise, we just got to wait and then I'll work it through to try to build it in as we get, you know, more wiggle room with regards to, it could be part of a bond issuance. You know, it's facilities, so that could potentially be included in a bond.
So we're looking at approximately 200,000 surplus this year.
No, what's the surplus that we're looking at for this year, Marie? What we're anticipating projecting as surplus this year?
212,745.
This year, in the current year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Well, based on the latest forecast, let me give you the latest forecast that we did in July. 1 second, sorry.
Let me see if Nikki, did you send it to me? Let me see. Nicole, here it is. Okay.
Okay, without the COVID impact, because we're considering that to be reimbursable, it's 308,685.
So that would basically potentially cover. I got it, Nikki. Thank you. I saw the email. So, like I said, the amount necessary to complete the license plate reader program by 100% completion of it is about 600,000. So
we could go half.
Could be phased potentially.
It just seems like we started this project when people in the village understand what it is. Every time I've been to a crime watch party and we explain it to them, people really like it. They like this idea that our police have this technology. It seems to me we ought to, if we've got another 600 to complete it, we ought to consider apportioning some of this surplus to it. Not all of it perhaps, but whatever, but something that makes sense. So every year we can work to completing this system rather than not doing anything, because the way we have it now, I forget how many camera locations there are, but it's not enough. It was just phase 1. We really should be looking to complete it so our police have this tool to both detect crime and fight crime that occurs. It just makes sense.
The objective was to create sort of a geofence.
Yes.
Which was coordinated with the other municipalities that have the license plate readers in order to avoid a huge capital expense all at once. We did the first phase, we got them installed, we worked through the bugs, we figured out what issues we were going to have, and then we created a second phase to complete them. I mean, I would certainly be in agreement with apportioning, you know, a certain percentage of the excess and surplus in the budget to a line item to help us finish that out. I would hate to see a project like that sort of die in the middle, half done.
Right.
If we can find a way to do it.
I agree with that.
So the question is, how much, let's say the 308,685, how much should we put toward LPRs?
What you're anticipating, what you're suggesting is that we take savings from the current year and just carry that over, or not put it towards the surplus.
Be a carryover amendment adjustment.
Right.
Yeah.
Confirm there's 4 cameras, and I have the locations if you want them.
Currently, there's 4 cameras that have been built as part of
Okay.
one, and that
Which
cost
is-
$304,000 to build.
All right. All right.
So, I mean, there's 2 ways to do it. We could either actually say, all right, we're going to take X number of dollars and set those aside and sort of put them in an LPR fund that's going to accrue. The other way to do it might be to say, you know, we're projecting a surplus, whatever's left at the end of the fiscal year, which may be $100,000, maybe $200,000, maybe the full $300,000. We're going to commit to putting into LPRs in the next fiscal year. There's kind of 2 ways to think about it. One is a firmer commitment, but I think would lead us to commit us by necessity out of being very conservative about budgeting a smaller number. Whereas if we leave it a little looser, we might actually be able to get more funds put into that project at the end. I don't know if I'm clear in the way I'm thinking about it. Because we generally do very well, right? We generally come in with a couple $100,000 under what we project. Staff is usually pretty good about finding a savings here, a savings there, whatever. We have a lot of unknowns coming into the upcoming fiscal year, right? We're making a lot of assumptions in a unique environment because of COVID. They're not necessarily structural, but they are situational because of the pandemic. You know, we could say, we're going to see how much of this surplus appears to be a real surplus as we get halfway through the next fiscal year, and then take, a certain number of dollars and set them aside and revisit that.
Marie just mentioned to me, Marie, real quick, that money that's in the bond, does that take into consideration all the pending programs, and the overages on the other stuff? That's money that we haven't used?
Well, we are going to cover this year's overages with the money that's coming in from the roof.
Okay, so right now on the old bond, the old one, the one that we just did.
No, the one that's in this budget.
The one that's
in 21. That's what I was telling you.
Oh, for next year's, not the old budget bonds.
No.
We used up all that. Okay, I thought this was coming from the old bond. Okay,
no.
The new bond, if we were to issue a new bond, right now we have about $363 that have not been to get to that $8 million. So we have right now identified 7 million.
636,933.
Right. So we have a little extra in that bond that we haven't attributed to any project that could potentially be used if we move forward with the bond to do the license plate reader program. That's 363, you said? That's not
$863,000 that is not allocated for a project in the $8 million bond.
Okay.
Here's what I would do, because I think we all want to see the LPR program funded. And we're talking about retiring a bond and issuing a new bond in February. And we have wiggle room within that bond. And it's always a possibility that we'll see additional savings based on our projected costs. It's typical in these sort of multi-project bonds to have bids come in lower. I would say, let's sit on our surplus. Cash is king in these times. We have a bond coming up that is going to be basically free financing, because at 2% plus factoring in inflation, you're talking about free money. I mean, it would be absurd to finance these sorts of capital improvements any other way other than a bond at 2%. And then we know that whatever unused funds we have in this upcoming bond, we're going to use them in order to move the LPR program forward. We write the bond in such a way that we can use it for the LPR program, which we already committed to and already have funded anyway. Right? And at the same time, we sit on our cash, because as we have discussed at the beginning of this meeting, cash is king, and we want to be very careful about our cash.
So add the license plate reader program to the bond projects, potential bond projects.
The 304 or the full 363?
Whatever is left over is, I guess, in the bond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and if there's a slight difference, let's take that out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the way this works is, the great thing about the license plate readers is you can put in 1 at a time, you can put in 2 at a time, you can put in 6 at a time, right? If we have unused capacity in that bond, we should be using it for the license plate readers. We need to finish the
Phase
project.
2. How many actual readers are part of phase 2?
Jason, can you text me? Well, I think, we built 4. I want to say off the top of my head that it was a total of 16 total.
I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we could do piecemeal, like Anna's saying.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have to do them. You don't have to do them all at once. And so you can include LPRs into the bond and say, we have this approved program. We've already started. Whatever capacity we have on the backside of that bond, we build it out. If it's 4 LPRs, great. If it's 8 LPRs, fantastic. But we move the LPR project forward with the bond, which is what's appropriate.
I agree.
All right, so is council on board with that?
Yep.
Good with it. I think it needs to get done.
Okay. All right, so we'll add that to the list of items for that. All right, real quick, I wanted to share with you the cost for the shared use paths. So the shared use path on 67th Avenue comes with a cost of $2.2 million. The shared use path on Kendall Drive comes for a cost of $801,000. Now, both these are eligible for grant funds. So if we wanted to, just like we got 1.3 million for the one that then or $1 million that we then gave to the county to do the one on 136th Street. My first suggestion would be that we go try to find some funds to pay for the majority of these costs. So we don't totally deplete our transportation fund or CITT.
How long would it take to do that? How long do you think it would take to find that kind of money?
I mean, what we could potentially do is go forward with the construction documents to kind of get us, here's the construction document costs. So for 67th Avenue, it's a $277,000 roughly price tag. And for the one on Kendall, it's roughly $100,000 for the design.
Are we contemplating doing both at the same time or picking one over the other?
It's up to you guys. We talked about it. You wanted me to price out and give you guys an idea of what it would cost to do both those projects. I know that 67th had the, just basically replacing what's out there and going back to a wider path, but just bringing that back to what it used to be, ironically. And then the one on Kendall was a whole new project. That was the one that Councilmember Kraft had mentioned. So that one, we can move the construction design of both these. So total, we're talking just less than 400 grand. So hold on, let me look at what's in the transportation fund for consulting, miscellaneous consulting, Angela, and transportation fund for miscellaneous projects.
Do you think putting them both on at the same time is too much or
I don't know. I don't know how much money we have there, because remember, we just had placeholders for miscellaneous projects, so we can move one or the other or both. It depends on the money. I'll tell you in a minute. What's
75,000.
Oh yeah, so not even close. So yeah, then I would look to maybe doing something with the Kendall Drive project. And I'll try to find grant funding so we can at least move the Kendall Drive project forward.
Why are you picking that first, Yossi? Why are you picking Kendall Drive?
Just because the design for that is less than 100 grand for that one, where Ludlam is almost 300,000. It's a much more larger project. And I'm looking at what we have available right now in next year's budget that could be specifically apportioned for one of these projects without having to raise, you know, it's either that or we try to absorb it in a bond issuance, but you know, that is for you guys to discuss. Because the other alternative that we could look at if you wanted to do these and thinking ahead is taking the money we have in transportation and using that for bonding, but that's a separate, you know, another way to do it.
I would just say from a user perspective, for a bicycle user perspective, Ludlam would be the better choice. Kendall Drive's on the edge of the village. My thought it would be the north-south axis would be better for bicyclists, especially if at the south end, Ludlam would hook into what's going to happen on 136th Street,
Right.
which then hooks into the other bike path that goes around on Old Cutler.
Hold on, I was gonna look at,
I agree with that.
okay, so if we do, I was just gonna look at, because I don't have it up here. Oh, maybe it's here. This is it. Okay, just look at debt service. Okay, so debt service. Okay, hold on. Angela, is this in the 5-year program to do that or no? No, we don't have it set up in the 5-year program. Hold on. Debt service. Okay, so the next time that potentially we could, how much was this bond, the 2024 bond? Do we know what that total bond was for? Pinecrest Gardens and Library. Hold on. Marie, do you know? She's not on there. Pinecrest
I'm
Gardens.
here, I'm just trying to find it. The 20, which bond, which one are you?
It was the 2004 8-1. What was the total? What was that bond when we first initially put it out?
Let me see if I can find the.
It's in the text up above. If it's a 04-1, it was for 3.1.
3.1. We look to that, LPR was 12 intersect. Oh, okay. The 12, going back, Jason just texted me, the LPR were 12 intersections total for 900,000. So we've already built 4. Okay. So one idea could potentially be to get those projects up for potentially a reissuance in 2024. So in 4 years to do it. And meanwhile, try to get some grants for that project. The grants, I think we can be successful with just because we've done it in the past with the MPO and we've gotten it. So I want to say that we will likely be able to get grants, but to move those projects at that cost, the only thing we can do right now would be to start design on one of them. Or building up, like build up this year some money so that we can maybe start design half a year and then pay the other half in next fiscal year kind of thing. And just time the project where we finish the design over a 2-year period.
Right.
That makes some sense.
Yeah, I like the building up strategy.
So, okay. All right, so let me work on doing something that puts together, starts socking away funding to do the design on both projects at the same time. We're gonna move both projects at the same time, and then I'll come up with a long-term financing for the budget hearings when we talk budget hearing. Okay. So anything on the wish list that did not make it that you guys want to potentially consider, or are we done? Are we good with what we've?
Well, we added the cameras and we added the bike thing, right?
The camera was added to the bond issuance as a project.
Right.
Whatever amount is left in there that can be used towards license plate readers will be built out. And then I gotta look at the, the construction, the design costs, building that into the budget for out of transportation fund money. Let me work on that, because we do have money. So we only have 75,000 right now, Marie, in transportation fund for consulting.
Sorry, I was updating the file. Okay, transportation.
Under professional services for MISC engineering design, for next year, 75. We typically put more, but this year we lowered it.
And what else is, what are the other things that are hitting that account? Do you have that full file? Can you pull it up so I can look at it real quick?
If you scroll in the budget document, go to the transportation fund and it gives you the list of all the, everything from personnel to operating and capital.
Yeah, but I wanted to look at, hold on.
You want the worksheets?
I want the worksheets, yeah. I don't know why, now I lost you guys. I can't find your faces.
Can you see?
Hold on, because I can't see anybody's face. I don't know what I did now.
Find us. We're in there.
Just hit escape and we should come back.
I'm hitting escape and it's not opening. Start Zoom, hold on. If I get dropped, I'll call back. No, that's still in there. That's so weird. Okay, I don't know what the hell I did. Oh. Zoom. That is the weirdest thing. Hold on. I don't want to leave the meeting. I can't see it.
You should have 2 windows for Zoom. And one of them has the cameras.
It's not letting me go in. I don't know if I have to get out and come back in. I don't know what I did. Let me get back out. I'll come right back in. Give me a second. It'll take 2 seconds. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so it's just miscellaneous design. Okay. And then we had, Marie, what are the other line items that we have for that department?
You want me to go through the tabs, the different?
Yeah. Tree maintenance. Okay, keep going. What's that? Oh, no, keep going. I'm just looking for money.
This is just the utilities.
Yeah, no, keep going. Bucket truck I took out. Okay. Oh yeah, so it's lean. There's nothing. And there's nothing in the fund balance. What do we have for construction? There. Okay, hold on. Village-wide paving.
You're gonna end the year with 13,874.
Yeah, hold on. Village-wide beautification, streetscape, MFA, sidewalk improvements. So we have $60,000 there for sidewalk improvements. So you have 75 plus 60. That's 135. So that covers the.
But sidewalk improvements are like fixing broken sidewalks, right? Connecting 2 pieces that.
But we also have a sidewalk fund also that we have to spend for sidewalk. So we can hit, like the maintenance stuff can hit the sidewalk fund. I was putting aside money on the sidewalk fund that comes from you know, when we do development and we don't build the sidewalk, then people put money away in the sidewalk fund. I was using the sidewalk fund to come up with the match for the $250,000 grant that goes to the Lower Garden ADA sidewalk path improvements for that match. So we might have money there. I was holding it to see what the construction document, you know, when we go out to bid, what the actual number for the construction is going to be. But I'm sure we have enough between the sidewalk fund and this that we could at least move forward with one of those construction, you know, to come up with a construction design for one of those projects. I would recommend, I know that you all want to do Ludlam, but I would do the Kendall Drive first, only because it's cheaper. But it's up to you. Otherwise, I think we do have to do it over multiple years.
I think we ought to do it over multiple years. If we're going to do it, we ought to make it so it's bicycle friendly and not just because it's cheaper. The Kendall Drive one doesn't make sense from a bicycle perspective compared to Ludlam.
But I'm talking about doing design.
Yeah, but even design. That way, if we're moving design and then after design we have enough money, then we can do the Ludlam shared use path. I'm just speaking as someone who bikes around. The Kendall Drive is not the way to go.
I agree. And just go back to the funding, the sidewalk funding. Remind me, do we have other sidewalk funds, or would all of the sidewalk funding be put towards that? Because I know a lot of us are interested in maybe.
So sidewalk, we have a separate fund that is a sidewalk fund, which is where monies from development.
Okay.
And they don't build sidewalks. We use that funding to, you know, do any areas that were missing sidewalk links as part of the transportation fund that pays for that. That money, we were also putting aside as a match for the $250,000 grant for the Lower Garden ADA paths, the sidewalks in the Lower Garden. So that was the source of that match. I think that fund already has 300,000 roughly in there. So there's some money there that isn't the match for that ADA project. What I was waiting for was, because now we're wrapping up the design on that and we're going to put it out to bid, then I'll know the true construction costs. So I wanted to keep that little wiggle room there. But right now, based on using the miscellaneous consultant fees that are in the transportation fund and some of the sidewalk money, we have enough to cover the $99,000 or $98,000 for design of the Kendall Drive one. If we wanted to do Ludlam, it's a $270,000 ticket. So I don't think we could do both. That's why I'm saying just the design. I'm not even talking about now. That doesn't mean we won't go. I could turn around if you guys want to go forward. I can turn around and go for grants and try to get grant funding to do the design for these projects. And we likely will get it. But, you know, grants take a while. You have to apply and then wait. And then if the legislature approves it, so there's that long-term financing approach. So how much do you want to do this now? Or do we come up with a multi-year approach and we aim towards building these things in 2024? Ooh. Or retiring that bond early if we have extra money, because that bond in 2024 only has a debt service of $250,000 a year. Because that bond, the other way, we can sit on the money in the transportation fund with the idea of paying down that debt early, in 2 years and reissuing a bond for, how much was that bond? 3.5? What was that bond? The one that's due in 2024?
3.1.
3.1 and pay for the projects.
And we refinanced it afterwards, so.
There's a lot of
I would say it's hard. it's hard to do this in a workshop like
All right,
this.
let me work on it. Let me just try to get what you guys want and try to find a way to do it. And I'll come back with something at budget meeting with what I think we should do. I'll come back with 2 different scenarios.
Sounds good.
Let me work the numbers with staff and see how we can make this happen. But based on your reactions, like you want it sooner than later, right? Like,
Well, this is just a general comment. I mean, I'm assuming with all of the COVID financial impacts on the state and everybody that the grant opportunities are going to be significantly decreased this year, correct?
but we might get a lot more through the federal government because now the federal government is pushing grants for stimulus purposes.
Okay.
And so it all depends. Everything's like a big question mark, but yeah, like we always try to parlay the grants. The question is, how quickly do you want this to go forward?
Unfortunately, I'm running against a 1 o'clock drop time. So what do we have to discuss?
All right, at this point, I wish you had told me that earlier.
Well, it doesn't matter because you just dropped off. Where'd you go? Well, I guess that irritates.
Yeah, she got mad and left.
Typically, it doesn't do.
I would just say, I mean, the Ludlam shared use path, that's not a top priority item to me. I mean, that's something that we should be doing, but it's not top priority.
I agree.
You're muted, Yossi.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button by mistake and got myself out of the meeting. All
Yeah,
right.
that trap door button that he has.
That stage left, right? Okay. At this point, are you guys comfortable with what we've done? What do you want to do as far as, the bonds? Are you comfortable moving forward with the bond? Are we still going in that direction? What are we doing? Are you comfortable with the proposed budget? We had, some unanswered questions that you guys need to.
From my point of view, I'm comfortable with the whole thing. I like the bond. I don't think it makes any sense to do anything to not do a bond. And I mean, if we wanted to argue about taking things out or internally to that bond and replacing them with something else out of our list of projects, probably this list of things that didn't make the budget this year. I mean, that's a valid discussion, but I think I'm fine with the bond anyway. I think I'm also fine with the remainder of the budget. We seem to have, like we usually do, have a balanced budget and do what we can afford. And we have a little bit of a surplus, so we can either, go backward. We could even give a tax cut if we wanted to with the surplus. If anybody wanted to discuss that, we were discussing it last year. But we still do have a surplus, and we're just about doing everything we want to do. So I'm very happy with it as it stands now.
Me too. And is this the time to talk about a possible increase for our village clerk and manager, or is that at another time?
No, this is the time. What would you propose, Katie?
It's always a good time to do that.
I mean, I would love to get your thoughts. I mean, my thought is, we gave it to all of the other employees. And I mean, my personal opinion is this has been a very challenging year, and there's been a lot of hard work going into this year that I would be in favor of an increase. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Would you be in favor of an increase that's commensurate with what we're giving for the rest of the staff? We've been giving a 5% across the board, a 3%, 3% merit, 2%
COLA.
COLA.
Yeah, I'd be happy with.
We did that with our police officers. We've done that with all of our staff in every other department. We didn't do it that way the last time we gave them a boost. We gave it on the pension side, I think, in terms of our pension contribution.
Correct. You put us back up, yeah.
Why don't you weigh in, because didn't you have a reason you wanted it that way?
On the pension side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I monitor what other managers are making across the board. We do comparisons, salary comparisons, and I'm not interested in being one of the most well-paid managers in the county. There's people that obviously have larger cities and some smaller cities than us that get paid more, but I'd like to not be sticking out like a sore thumb when it comes to my salary. So in light of that, I pitched last time to council that we put it in my pension rather than in, you know, into my
You know,
salary.
I concur with the manager. We'd like to stay in the same level as our colleagues in comparable cities like Aventura or Coral Gables. So we appreciated that the council did that last year. I'd be more than happy with something similar to what our employees are getting this year in the 5% range to salary.
And I will say that I did look at the benchmark data from both the county and the State Association of Managers. So I'm aware of where Yossi's salary is compared to other cities. And I don't think that you know, a 5% bump this year is going to make her, you know, the gold-plated toilet queen of Miami-Dade County.
No, it would
keep her in line with comparable cities.
Right.
So Marie, we will need you to go in and
Price that out.
and price out what that means in terms of a hit to the budget.
Yes, you need this for now before you vote, or
Do we vote in this workshop, or do we
I
simply?
don't know how that
No,
works.
we don't vote.
No.
Okay, all right, I'll have it ready. It'll be ready today, everything will be done.
yeah, let's get the, I mean, I'm fine with leaving it here and then we can take this up next week or whatever, because we've got, if there are any questions, we got to deal with that. And then we've got 2 public hearings where we can do just where we, you know, take actual public input in this format.
Right.
So we got at least 2 more meetings to discuss this.
Any feeling on that, on the basketball court for the middle school, or leave it out?
I like the basketball court for the middle school, but it depends on if we can afford it.
I think that's one of those situations where the village uses the facilities at the middle school a lot. We cover our own behinds on the fact that we are underparked by having that agreement with the public schools to use those facilities. And we have a lack of parks facilities in general. So if it's time to do that, the people who use those courts the most and benefit from them the most are our residents who are using them for, you know, league basketball, to be frank.
Right. We don't, by the way, the village doesn't program the basketball courts. This was just an ask, because they obviously.
But the community uses them
The
because
community uses it. We don't program it, right?
the Bethlehem League uses them as practice courts. I mean, it's the place where people go and shoot hoops.
Right.
And it just so happens that it's at the.
I'd like to fit that in if we could, but I'm not quite sure how to go about doing that.
And I'm all for making a public basketball court be accessible for our residents, and maybe things have changed, but in the olden days, we would have leagues who were not cheap and they would hop the fence and use our courts. And they would basically, you know, destroy them. And PTA would have to buy the new nets and buy the new equipment. And I never understood why.
Okay, Rob is texting me. The school wants to keep the public out, so never mind. This was an ask potentially, but apparently the school does not want to allow people to use this.
That's another issue then.
Yeah, those courts are locked. The ones between the middle school and the elementary, they're not open unless when the school unlocks the gates.
So basically what we would proffer to the school is higher gates and larger padlocks because they're having trouble keeping our people out.
Put that in our negotiations about the sign.
I have a meeting scheduled to go with them. They asked for a meeting. I had, asked Steve to be the lead on just telling them like our code is our code. And now they've asked for a meeting with me. So at some point this week, I think I'm meeting with them.
Well, we want to keep terrible signs. Let them know that. If they want to keep the public off their stuff, we want to keep their signs out of our city.
Right. I got it. Understood. Okay, so salaries for the clerk and I, look and see how we can do the shared use paths projects, how to make those happen and come up with some kind of financing or long-term or short-term plan to make those happen. Any other things on the wish list that you guys want to talk about? Otherwise, then I think we're good.
We're good.
All right, perfect timing. Good work, everybody.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
You,
Take care.
Goodbye.
everyone.